"Julian, I'm begging you, please, save the Weatherly family." Willow Weatherly's hair was a mess as she knelt outside the study, her head hitting the stone floor again and again. With each heavy thud, her forehead grew bloodier. She cried out, her voice raw and breaking, but the man inside refused to even look at her. She was the daughter of the Minister of Revenue. Years ago, at the Scholars' Gala, she had fallen in love at first sight with the young general from the Thorne family. She'd swallowed her pride and begged His Majesty to grant them a marriage, and the Emperor had agreed. For all these years, Julian Thorne had despised her. He saw her as a manipulative sycophant, an object of his utter disgust. Willow hadn't cared. She believed that with time, even a heart of stone could be warmed. But today, her handmaiden, Rosalind, had brought shattering news. Her father had been accused of corruption and conspiracy, of embezzling hundreds of thousands in military funds. He was already in the dungeons, and the entire Weatherly clan was sentenced to execution. The world seemed to crumble around Willow. A deafening roar filled her ears, and she nearly fainted. She had rushed to find Julian, praying he would intervene. "My father has always been just and incorruptible. You've worked with him for years. How could you believe he would do such a thing?" Willow's voice was ragged with grief. "Julian, I beg you, see that justice is done for him." At last, the study door opened. A tall, imposing man with strikingly handsome features stepped out. His face was a mask of impatience. "The imperial edict has been issued," he said coolly. "It cannot be defied." Willow crawled forward, trembling, and grabbed the hem of his trousers. "Julian, my father has served the crown for decades. He is loyal and upright, caring only for the people. How could a man like that embezzle funds?" Julian flinched as if touched by something unclean, kicking her hand away with a frown. "I know he is an honest official, but if I say he is corrupt, then he is corrupt. No one will believe him. I had someone plant the evidence in his study myself." Willow's eyes widened in disbelief. The color drained from her face. "It was you. It's what the Weatherly family deserves for their arrogance, for what they did to Sylvia, disowning her, leaving her without a father's care or a mother's love. She suffered endless humiliation in your family home. This is merely retribution." Julian's eyes were pools of ice. The Sylvia he spoke of was Willow's illegitimate half-sister, Sylvia Weatherly. It was no secret that Julian's heart truly belonged to Sylvia. Many people knew, but why was he so devoted to a person of her character while treating Willow like dirt beneath his heel? "She tried to drug me and have my honor-ruined father found out, and that's why he disowned her. She was the one in the wrong. Silent Sylvia is gentle and kind. She could never be the venomous person you describe." Julian looked down at her, his voice cold as steel. "Get out and don't let me see you again." Willow wanted to explain more, but a guard suddenly arrived. "General, a report: all 128 members of the Weatherly household were executed at noon. 128 people. All executed." A bolt of lightning struck Willow, shattering her world. Her father, her mother, her younger brother, the old butler who had watched her grow up, all of them were dead, just so Julian could avenge Sylvia. The weight of the blow was too much to bear. She coughed up a mouthful of blood, her laughter mingling with sobs as she teetered on the edge of madness. "Julian Thorne, oh, Julian, how could you be so cruel? I am your wife. You'd rather believe an outsider than a single word from me. I gave you my deepest love, and in return, you destroyed my entire family for another woman." She struggled to her feet, wanting to lunge at him, to tear him apart. But as she rose, darkness consumed her, and she collapsed unconscious. Julian was about to order the servants to drag the woman away when he saw the blood pooling beneath her. It gushed out, forming a dark, spreading stain. His pupils contracted. "Someone get a physician." Inside the room, the physician nervously prescribed hemostatic medicine for Willow. "General, your wife is 3 months pregnant. From now on, she must not be agitated. It would be best for her to remain on bed rest. I was barely able to save the child this time. She cannot endure another shock." Willow's hemorrhage was caused by extreme emotional distress and accumulated grief, which had nearly caused a miscarriage. She's pregnant, Julian froze. He was going to have a child. He looked at Willow's pale, fragile face as she slept, and a cold resolve hardened his features. This scheming woman did not deserve to bear his child. He had Sylvia now. There was no need for Willow's child to exist. My lady, you're finally awake." Lying in bed, Willow slowly opened her eyes. Her body felt as if it had been broken apart, a sharp pain radiating from her lower abdomen. She painstakingly turned her head to look at her handmaiden, Rosalind, by the bedside. What happened to me?" Rosalind wiped away her tears. "You fainted, my lady. The general called for a physician. He said you're 3 months pregnant and nearly lost the child. Thank heavens you are blessed." Willow's hands flew to her belly, her face a mask of disbelief. She was pregnant. A flicker of life, of hope, ignited in Willow's deadened eyes. The massacre of her family had left her drowning in grief, wishing only for death so she could join her father. But now, this child. It gave her a reason she had to live. If she died, the Weatherly bloodline would be extinguished forever. This child was the last of her family, the last hope for the Weatherly name to rise again. Her voice was a raw whisper. "Rosa, please bring me something nourishing for the baby." Rosalind nodded eagerly. But as she reached the door, a mob of servants burst in, knocking her violently to the ground. By the general's order, the sinner's daughter, Willow Weatherly, is to be moved from the main residence immediately. She will eat and live with the servants and attend to the masters. Willow's bloodless lips trembled, 1,000 needles piercing her heart. "What?" Rosalind cried out in disbelief. "Even if the Weatherly family has fallen, my lady is still the rightful Lady Thorne." The head matron leading the group sneered at them both. Without the Weatherly family's backing and with the general's indifference, this mistress and her maid were in for a miserable time. Drag her away, throw her into the service yard. The room in the service yard was drafty and exposed, the thin blanket offering no protection from the cold. They were given the cheapest, coarsest linen clothes, and their food was nothing but cold leftovers. Rosalind held Willow tightly, sobbing until she could barely breathe. "My lady, your life is so bitter the general is heartless. On the way here, I heard those wicked servants chattering with glee. They said the general is preparing to marry that Sylvia woman today and plans to serve you with divorce papers. You are the gentlest, kindest woman in the world, my lady. The general is an ungrateful wretch. You traveled day and night to the battlefield to pull him from a pile of corpses, and you nursed him for 3 days and 3 nights without sleep, and now he destroys your family and forces you into servitude. It's hateful." Willow's heart was a desolate wasteland. She managed a faint smile, but it turned into a cough that brought up blood. "Julian, if only I had never fallen in love with you." Outside, the sounds of gongs and drums filled the air. The estate was festooned with lanterns and decorations, a scene of joyous celebration. Tonight was Julian and Sylvia's wedding. All the servants were at the banquet, and no one paid any mind to Willow in the service yard. No one even remembered to bring them food. Willow lay on the cold, dilapidated bed, listening to the boisterous celebration. Tears streamed silently down her face. In all her years as his wife, she had been obedient, diligent, virtuous, and respectful, never daring to slacken for a moment. She had thought that even if he didn't love her, as long as she loved him, he would eventually see her worth. How wrong she had been. She would never dare to love Julian Thorne again. She had been a foolish moth drawn to a flame, only to be burned to ashes, taking her family down with her. Not even 1,000 deaths could atone for her sins. Now, all she could do was cling to life in this broken body, to preserve the last of the Weatherly bloodline. In the middle of the night, rain fell outside the window. In a state between waking and sleeping, Willow felt herself being roughly dragged from her bed. Her lips were pried open, and a bitter liquid was poured down her throat. Slowly, her senses returned, and she saw the same head matron forcing a potion into her mouth. Willow struggled violently, but an excruciating, twisting pain erupted in her abdomen. A cold sweat broke out on her brow, and she writhed on the floor in agony. A vicious glint appeared in the matron's eyes. Lady Thorne, this is safflower, a gift from the general himself to help you get rid of that bastard child safflower. A potion to induce a miscarriage. No, save me, save my child. No, I don't care if he marries another. I don't care if he divorces me. Why can't he just let me keep my child? This is my baby, it's his baby, too, her heart-wrenching wails echoed through the room. Casting aside all dignity and grace, Willow knelt on the floor, begging the matron to spare her child. This is your fate. The general said that Lady Sylvia would be displeased to see this child, so you'll just have to bear this small inconvenience. No, just because of a single word of displeasure from Sylvia. He would extinguish a life so callously. This was their own flesh and blood she fought with all her might, but in the next instant, she felt a terrible, emptying sensation, as if something precious had been torn from her womb. Willow's eyes were wide, red, and dry. She had no tears left to cry. Before she passed out, she wondered why Julian hated her so much that he wouldn't even spare his own child. The baby was so small, it had never even seen the light of this world. He was joyfully marrying the woman he loved, his dreams fulfilled. She was left to drink a bitter potion and lie on a cold floor with no one to pity her. Julian, my family is already gone. Why couldn't you even spare a child? The next day, before dawn, Willow was woken by the sharp crack of the head matron's whip. Now that you're in my service yard, you'll follow my rules. The new lady has decreed that you will present yourself to her every morning to pay your respects before you start your work. Willow opened her eyes, her gaze gray and lifeless. It felt as if a part of her had died with her child last night. Rosalind was summoned to sweep the entire estate's courtyards. There wasn't an unmarked patch of skin on her body. She had been beaten severely the night before for trying to protect Willow, but her efforts had been in vain. Before leaving, she said with tear-filled eyes, "My lady, please don't be sad. Be careful when you go. Don't get into a conflict with that venomous woman, Sylvia. She's treacherous and jealous. You must endure." Willow clutched her stomach, sharp pains still shooting through her. The matron kicked Rosalind hard. Someone, slap her face 20 slaps for speaking ill of her master behind her back. Willow was forced to Sylvia's main courtyard, where she knelt on the ground to pay her respects. "Oh my, sister, why do you look so haggard?" A light, mocking voice came from above her. Willow bit her lip in humiliation, her fists clenching inside her sleeves. To be forced to kneel before the person who had once tried to destroy her was the ultimate degradation. But no one cared. No one would save her. She was now nothing more than a servant in the general's estate. Willow bowed her head low, her eyes red and moist. "Enough. You may rise, sister. Accompany me for a walk by the lake." Willow followed behind Sylvia, her head bowed and her expression placid, not saying a word. "Did you know, sister? Last night, the general gifted me many rare treasures. He even gave me the golden command token the emperor bestowed upon him to play with." Sylvia's smile was radiant. Her graceful figure swayed as she walked, her face as lovely as a hibiscus, utterly captivating. "You never received such favor, did you, sister?" Willow gave a bitter smile. Julian found the mere sight of her repulsive. Why would he ever give her a gift? Her chest tightened with a familiar, suffocating pain. Suddenly, Sylvia saw something, and a calculating look flashed in her eyes. She grabbed Willow's hand and cried out, "Sister, don't push me, ah!" As she screamed, she threw herself backward. Willow was stunned by the sudden move. With a loud splash, Sylvia fell into the lake, thrashing about in the water. A tall, dark figure leaped into the water at once, pulling Sylvia out and carefully wrapping his own cloak around her. It was Julian. "Sister, just because you're jealous of the general's affection for me, you would try to kill me?" Sylvia's eyes filled with tears, her voice trembling. Willow instinctively mumbled, "I didn't." Julian struck her across the face. Her head snapped to the side, a bright red handprint blooming on her pale cheek. Viper, Julian's expression was glacial, his eyes filled with disgust as if he were looking at something foul. "Kneel. No food for 2 days. Reflect on what you've done." The slap left Willow dizzy, her vision spotting with black. She hadn't eaten in half a day and was weak with hunger. Her body went limp, and she slid to the ground, gasping for breath. A pair of black boots, embroidered with silver clouds, entered her line of sight. They were the boots Julian wore. Willow remembered them. Sylvia had embroidered them herself. She thought of the protective talisman she had spent countless nights embroidering by candlelight for him. She had never once seen him wear it and had assumed he simply disliked such feminine trinkets. Now she understood. He just disliked them when they came from her. A desolate smile touched her lips. She bowed her head deeply, and as she smiled, she began to cough up blood. Willow managed to kneel for only half a day before she collapsed. She lay in bed, burning with fever for days on end, clinging to life by a thread. When she finally woke, she stared blankly at the cobweb-covered ceiling. While feverish, she had a dream. In it, her parents held her hands tightly and told her to live on. People are like weeds, they said. They can take root anywhere. As long as you are alive, there is hope. When she came to, she was back in the service yard, her gaze met by Rosalind's small, anxious face. She let out a deep cough, her voice hoarse. Seeing the dead, hopeless look in Willow's eyes, Rosalind's nose tingled with tears. "My lady, I secretly used my own money to hire a physician. He said your body is severely weakened and the damage is permanent. If you don't rest and recover properly, you won't have more than a few years left." She set down the medicine bowl and collapsed into Willow's arms, sobbing. "Please don't leave me, my lady. If you're gone, I'll just dash my head against a wall and follow you." "Don't say that," Willow said quickly. "You're still young. After I'm gone, perhaps Julian will forget about you. You can find a chance to leave this place and get married." Rosalind shook her head, her eyes clear and resolute. "I will live and die with you, my lady." A bitter taste filled Willow's mouth. She reached out and gently stroked Rosalind's face. Rosalind had grown up with her. They were as close as sisters. Even if only for Rosalind's sake, she had to try to live. No matter how great the suffering and humiliation, she would grit her teeth and endure. She wanted Rosalind to have a good life. That was her last tie to this world. Her family was gone. Her child was gone. Only Rosalind was left to face this world with her. Seeing that the lifeless look had vanished from Willow's eyes, Rosalind finally breathed a sigh of relief. "My lady, you haven't eaten in days. I'll go get you something." Willow grabbed her hand weakly. "Go to the hidden compartment in my old room and bring me the Lotus Heart Pill." Arthur Weatherly, the Minister of Revenue, had doted on his only legitimate daughter. He had spent a fortune and decades of effort searching for rare medicines, finally managing to procure a single Lotus Heart Pill for her. The Lotus Heart Pill could cure any illness, even bringing a person back from the brink of death. Willow had been frail since childhood. A high monk from the National Temple had once read her fortune and predicted she would not live past the age of 22. Her father, refusing to believe in fate, had obtained the pill for her, wanting only to ensure she lived a long, peaceful, and healthy life. The Lotus Heart Pill was priceless, worth more than a king's ransom. Only two existed in the world. One was in the emperor's possession, and the other was hers. Thinking of her father, a wave of sorrow and longing washed over Willow. After taking the pill, the internal injuries from her miscarriage and the forced kneeling would be healed. But Willow waited, and Rosalind did not return. A sense of unease crept over her. Gritting her teeth, she forced herself out of bed. Enduring the piercing pain in her legs, she clung to the wall and slowly made her way out of the room. When Willow had married into the general's estate, she had lived in a side courtyard. Even though she was Julian's only official wife at the time, he had refused to let her live in the main residence. The moment Sylvia arrived, he had moved her in there instead. Everyone in the estate knew. The general simply felt that Willow was unworthy of the main residence. She reached her old courtyard and heard a familiar male voice, a voice etched into her very bones. "So the Lotus Heart Pill is still in her possession. Give it to me." Rosalind was kneeling on the ground, clutching a brocade box to her chest. "General, this is my lady's life-saving medicine. I beg you, please." Julian's expression was cold, his narrow eyes narrowed. Sylvia is gravely ill and needs the Lotus Heart Pill. What could possibly be wrong with a woman like her? I'll find a physician to treat her later. Hiding behind the wall, Willow felt a chill seep into her bones, as if she had been plunged into an icy abyss. Seeing that Rosalind refused to hand it over, Julian simply ordered his men to take the medicine by force. Rosalind was thrown roughly to the ground. Without thinking, Willow rushed out and stood in front of Julian. "That's mine, Julian, you can't take it." The sudden, violent movement made her vision go black. Her head spun, and she almost fainted. "You are a slave now. Your possessions are forfeit. This no longer belongs to you," Julian said, glancing at her with an air of disgust. "Get out of my way." Several guards stepped forward and shoved Willow aside without ceremony. She lost her footing and fell to the ground, her cheek scraping against a sharp stone, leaving a long, deep gash. "Ah!" Willow cried out in pain. Julian didn't spare her a second glance. He clutched the brocade box and hurried away in the direction of the main courtyard. Willow closed her eyes wearily, letting the blood from her face flow freely. The stark red against her pale skin made her look like a beautiful ghost that had clawed its way out of hell. She was so tired, so very tired. "I don't have much time left to live, Julian. Are you satisfied now?" After taking the Lotus Heart Pill, Julian did as he said and sent a physician to treat Willow. The physician looked at the woman curled into a ball on the bed and frowned. "You are consumed by grief day in and day out. Even a body of iron couldn't withstand it. I will prescribe you a few potent tonics, but they will, at most, extend your life by half a year. If you wish to live longer, you must seek a more skilled healer. There is nothing more I can do." Willow smiled self-deprecatingly, her expression filled with sorrow. The physician glanced at her and paused. "Also, the wound on your face, it may never fade. Your legs were damaged from kneeling for too long. The injury is permanent. In the future, you will walk with a limp." A scarred face, a crippled leg for any woman, this news would be devastating. But Willow only let out a wretched laugh. She had once been renowned in the capital for her talent and beauty, a peerless gem. But what did it matter now? Everything was ruined. Ruined because she had loved the wrong man. It turned out that love truly could kill a person. She couldn't help but remember that cold night many years ago. She and Julian had just been betrothed when war broke out on the border. Months after he left, a scout brought back news. The general had fallen in battle at the Gorge Pass, taking the enemy general down with him. Everyone had given up on Julian. They had ambushed the enemy at the pass, never intending to return alive. At the time, she had nearly gone mad with grief. Ignoring her father's pleas, she ran away from home and begged one of Julian's subordinates to take her to the border. Her reasoning was simple. A wife follows her husband in death. If Julian was dead, she would die by his side. A young lady who had been pampered her whole life spent an entire night digging through a pile of corpses until she finally found Julian. She discovered he wasn't dead. He was still breathing, merely unconscious. Alone, she had hoisted the tall man onto her back, her slender arms nearly collapsing under his weight. Gritting her teeth, Willow had carried Julian, step by step, out of that mountain of death. She hadn't slept for 3 days, only finally allowing herself to rest and collapse in relief once Julian was safe. Before Willow returned to the capital, Julian had grabbed the corner of her sleeve, his face flushed, and promised he would marry her. Her own face was pale with exhaustion, but her smile was radiant. "All right," she had said, "I'll be waiting for you in the capital." All of that seemed like a lifetime ago. Although she had begged the emperor to decree their marriage, leaving Julian no choice, she had also saved his life. She owed him nothing. In fact, he was the one who had broken his promise first. Yet Julian had destroyed her loyal family, caused her miscarriage, and left her broken and frail, withering away on the verge of death. For 20 years, she had lived as a treasured young lady. After meeting Julian, all that remained was a bleak existence with no end in sight. Julian and Sylvia were the celestial couple everyone envied and blessed. She was just a pathetic clown, mud on the ground, a filthy speck of dust. As these thoughts swirled, Willow curled herself into a tighter ball. She had half a year left. Not long at all. In this world, she had no more attachments. Her only thought was to use this time to find a way to settle Rosalind, so that after she was gone, Rosalind could live a good life. That was her last wish. Willow asked the physician not to tell anyone about her condition. No one but her knew she had only 6 months to live. She would spend her remaining days atoning for her sins. If she had never fallen in love with Julian, never saved his life, the Weatherly family would still be safe and sound. She was the sinner. It was she who had brought ruin upon her family. So all the suffering and hardship she endured these days, it must be heaven's punishment, mustn't it? From then on, Willow's face was a constant wooden mask, lifeless, as if she were a walking corpse. Life in the service yard was no different from hell. Anyone could take a moment to step on the head of the once lofty Lady Thorne. Willow lived each day amidst their mockery and abuse, washing clothes in icy water during the dead of winter, her fingers cracking and bleeding from the cold. She never fought back, as if she had already accepted her fate. Ha, look at her, so meek and obedient. The servants tossed a dirty bun into the broken bowl on the ground, clutching their sides with laughter. Hey, you filthy cur, that's your dinner. Aren't you going to kneel and thank us? Show us how a dog eats its food, ha. Willow's hands were tied. She stared at the cold bun on the ground for a long moment, then knelt down and bit into it with her mouth. If she didn't eat this bun, they wouldn't give her anything else. Tisk, she's really eating dog food. One of the servants stomped his foot hard on Willow's back, pressing down with his full weight. A sharp pain shot through her chest, and she let out a muffled grunt. Suddenly, a delicate female voice came from the entrance. "What are you doing? Stop it at once," the servants hastily bowed. "My lady, this Willow was being insolent. The matron ordered us to teach her a lesson." Sylvia walked into the courtyard, arm in arm with Julian. She wrinkled her nose at the small, dilapidated yard, seemingly disgusted by the smell. "That's no reason to humiliate someone like this. Is this how I've taught you to behave?" Willow didn't look up. She simply sat up straight and stared at the ground. Julian was wearing a new pair of boots today, embroidered with majestic dragons, phoenixes, and auspicious clouds. They were, of course, Sylvia's handiwork. Julian spoke, his voice cold. "Willow, you look utterly disgusting right now." He finished speaking and watched her, as if waiting for a response. He didn't know why, but when he had overheard some idle gossip from the servants about her face being scarred and her body being weak, he had felt an inexplicable tightness in his chest. When Sylvia suggested they visit Willow, he should have refused. But as if possessed, Julian had come along. A faint voice in his mind wanted to know how she was doing, but the sight of her filled him with a burning rage. The fiery, brilliant daughter of the Weatherly family, the noble young lady who had boldly asked the emperor to grant her marriage, was she now so debased that she would eat dog food in front of servants? She truly was inherently cheap. Willow lifted her eyelids slightly and glanced at Julian. She said nothing. Seeing her calm, detached expression only fueled Julian's anger. His fists clenched so tightly his knuckles cracked. "Julian, don't talk to sister like that," Sylvia said, her voice soft and placating. She took 2 steps forward and knelt in front of Willow, draping her own priceless white fox fur cloak over Willow's shoulders. Willow heard her whisper in her ear, "The truth is, I was never sick. I just pretended to be to fool Julian, and he willingly went to find medicine for me. Sister, you've been a complete joke from beginning to end." Willow looked at her, her eyes as still and deep as an old well. Sylvia, who had hoped to see her rival shamed by jealousy, was a little disappointed. She looked at the fox fur cloak with a pang of regret and pursed her lips. Sylvia felt guilty after she recovered and insisted on coming to thank you for giving up the Lotus Heart Pill, Julian sneered. "I see no need for it. A pill like that would be wasted on a woman like you anyway." Sylvia tugged on Julian's arm, signaling him to stop. "Forget it. Sylvia is too kind. It's an insult to her eyes to have her see you like this. Let's go, let her rot here." Julian took his beloved's hand and strode away. Julian, if you had told me years ago that you loved Sylvia, I would never have asked His Majesty for this marriage. Willow's voice was clear and cool, like a mountain spring. You never accepted me, but you never refused me either. I suppose it was because I was the Minister of Revenue's favored daughter and could bring you many benefits, while Sylvia was just an illegitimate girl who had been cast out. You couldn't marry her then. But after the Weatherly family fell and you rose to a high position, you could finally have what you wanted. Isn't that right? Julian's steps faltered for a moment. Then, without looking back, he continued on his way. Willow let out a low laugh. Love truly does blind a person. But she was awake now. She saw everything clearly. There was just no turning back. When Rosalind returned and learned what had happened, she was heartbroken for a long time, crying that her lady had been wronged. Willow tossed the fox fur cloak to the ground and said lightly, "Rosa, take this cloak and burn it." "Huh, such a fine cloak, my lady. Why burn it?" "It was a handout from Sylvia. Before someone else snatches it away, we might as well use it for firewood." After Julian and Sylvia's visit, the servant's attitude toward Willow improved slightly. She still did the most menial chores, but she was no longer beaten and cursed at so frequently. Willow's health deteriorated to an extreme degree. Soon, she was coughing up blood every day as she washed clothes. They received no monthly allowance, and Rosalind had to spend what little money she had on medicine for Willow. Soon, they were penniless. Looking at the last bowl of medicine Rosalind brought her, Willow sighed and took out a jade pendant she wore close to her heart. She gently caressed the character for Weatherly carved on its surface. "Take this to a pawn shop and sell it," she said, coughing. "On your way back, buy yourself something nice to eat." She would never have sold the pendant her father had left her if their situation hadn't become so dire. Willow was sitting in the courtyard, slowly scrubbing clothes, when the piece was suddenly shattered. The courtyard gate was thrown open with a bang. "Search the place," she turned to see Julian's dark, furious face. The men who stormed in were his personal guards. They ransacked the room, and soon one emerged holding something. "Reporting to the general, we found it," the guard exclaimed. "It's all evidence of treason and collusion with the enemy state of Lixeo." Willow's heart plummeted. Evidence of treason? When had that been planted in her room? What a perfect setup. She couldn't understand. She was already living in such a debased state. Why couldn't some people just leave her be? A storm brewed in Julian's eyes, his fists clenched tight. He stared at Willow, his expression grim, laced with a deep disappointment. When Sylvia had first provided the intelligence, he hadn't believed it. But he hadn't expected this woman to be so restless, to commit such a monstrous crime. "Willow Weatherly, you colluded with the foreign enemy, Lixeo, for wealth and glory. Your crime is unforgivable. Take her to the dungeons for interrogation." The fierce guards seized Willow. Her face was pale, but as they were about to drag her away, she suddenly looked up and stared directly at Julian. "If I told you I never betrayed my country, that I was framed, would you believe me?" Her hair was a mess, but her eyes were bright and piercing, clear and pure. Julian's heart skipped a beat, but he quickly recovered, dismissing it as another one of her tricks. "The evidence is irrefutable. Do you still intend to deny it? Those letters are in your own handwriting." Willow lowered her head and laughed. Her laughter grew louder and louder, until it became a wild, crazed cackle. "What are you laughing at?" Julian demanded, feeling a surge of irritation at her behavior. He was usually so aloof and detached. It was rare for him to feel so agitated. Willow said, "I'm laughing at how blind you are. I never used charcoal to write. But my husband, it seems, never noticed." Before Julian could speak, her laughter turned more desolate. "But it's futile for me to say anything, isn't it?" She shouldn't have held on to such a ridiculous fantasy, the idea that Julian would ever listen to her explanation. As expected, Julian did not believe her. Willow was thrown into the dungeons, and there she remained for 3 days. The various gruesome instruments of torture were used on her one by one. The thorny whips tore deep, bloody gashes into her skin with each lash, ripping away chunks of flesh. A red-hot branding iron was pressed firmly against her back. The sizzling sound filled the air, and Willow could even smell her own flesh burning. Iron nails were driven deep into her fingernails. When the torture was over, her 10 fingers were a bloody mess, and even if they healed, she would never be able to hold anything again. The dark, damp dungeon echoed with Willow's heart-wrenching, miserable cries, which continued throughout the night. The hands that had once caressed flowers, played the zither, and composed poetry were now completely ruined. She cried until her eyes were nearly blind, until her tears ran dry and her voice was too hoarse to speak. She no longer had the strength to stand and could only hang suspended in the air, her head lolling, like a tattered piece of cloth. At first, the jailers had felt disgust for this woman who had betrayed her country, and their methods were all the more brutal. But she had endured 18 different forms of torture and still insisted she had not betrayed her country, that she had been framed. The jailers began to have their doubts. Could she really have been framed? But they had to obey the general's orders. Willow fainted more and more frequently, until eventually, even cold water couldn't wake her. Julian stood outside the cell, his face terrifyingly grim. He was silent for a moment, then waved his hand. Call a physician to revive her. Suspend the interrogation for now. When Willow awoke, she smelled the aroma of food. Her nose twitched. She realized she was no longer in the torture chamber, but in a regular cell. In front of her was a meal. Though it was just simple porridge and side dishes, it was the first hot food she had eaten in a long time. Willow smiled weakly. Was this her last meal? She didn't dwell on it. Enduring the intense pain in her fingers, she picked up the bowl and began to eat. Unable to hold the chopsticks, she simply tipped the food into her mouth. Outside the iron bars, 2 or 3 jailers were chatting idly. They were talking about recent major events. For instance, the Minister of Revenue, Arthur Weatherly, had taken his own life in prison out of guilt. The male members of the Weatherly family had been taken to the execution grounds and beheaded. The women of the family, too, had spirit. Unwilling to be degraded, 38 of them had hung themselves together to preserve their honor. Hearing this, Willow's hand froze. She lowered her eyes, her heart aching. If her father could see her now, he would surely be so disappointed. The border war has been tight these past few months, one jailer said. His Majesty had sent the Grand Marshal to the front lines, but I heard that not long ago, Lixiao killed him and has been pushing forward, breaking through to Chenyu pass like a hot knife through butter. The emperor was at his wits' end. He had originally planned to send the valiant general, that is, Julian Thorne, for reinforcements. But some ministers at court advocated for a peace marriage and ceding territory to appease the enemy. For some reason, the emperor had agreed. The grand procession for the peace marriage would set off in 2 days. Lixiao would then withdraw its troops, and the common people would no longer have to live in fear. Willow finished her meal ravenously and licked her dry, chapped lips. If she could just get out of this cell, maybe she could try to escape. When the war was over, she could go anywhere. Lost in thought, Willow fell asleep. For once, she had a pleasant dream. There was no humiliation, no torment, only her loving father and the dazzling, proud years before her marriage. In a daze, Willow felt someone touching her. Her eyes snapped open to see an old servant measuring her with a soft ruler. "What are you doing?" she asked, her hoarse voice tinged with alarm. The old servant's hand trembled, nearly dropping the ruler. "I'm taking your measurements. A tailor will be here soon to make you a dress." Footsteps approached the door. Someone pushed it open. The old servant glanced over and bowed respectfully. "General, are you finished?" Julian looked at Willow behind the soft, red bed curtains, his gaze fixed on her pale, haggard face, his emotions in turmoil. "I'm finished. The dress can be ready by tomorrow. You may leave." The large room was now empty except for Julian and Willow. "Since when is the general so kind as to have clothes made for me?" Willow said with a cold sneer. Julian frowned. "Since you refuse to confess, I'll give you a chance to atone for your sins. Lixiao has invaded, occupying more than 10 of our cities, and the people are suffering from the ravages of war," he said, his tone hard. "His Majesty has decided to send the eldest princess for a peace marriage." Willow looked at him, her expression blank. What did that have to do with her? His Majesty is very close to the princess and cannot bear to see her married off to a rebel. I suggested to His Majesty that we make a switch. You will take the princess's place. Willow was stunned, her eyes wide with disbelief. Are you insane? This is a matter of great importance, not a child's game you think you can just switch people. When Lixeo discovers they've been deceived, won't that create an even deeper rift? In her agitation, she had spoken too much at once. A violent coughing fit seized her, so intense it felt as if she would cough up her own throat. Watching her cough, Julian felt a tightness in his chest. It doesn't matter. The purpose of this marriage isn't to negotiate peace. The escorting party will be my men. The marriage is just a cover. The real goal is to use this opportunity to infiltrate Lixeo and get close to their crown prince. The Lixeo crown prince was a brilliant military strategist, which was why their own forces had been consistently defeated. If they could successfully assassinate him, the crisis would be averted. The man's eyes were deep and cold. Hearing him speak so calmly, as if discussing everyday matters, Willow's emotions churned, and she laughed in fury. So you're sending me to my death, to be the pretext for your ambush, a disposable pawn? You have committed a monstrous crime. It was difficult enough for me to spare your life, it's just marrying in place of the princess. What's the big deal? If you can atone for your crimes through this meritorious service, perhaps your worthless life can be saved. It took Willow a long moment to force a stiff smile. How perfectly matter-of-fact he was. Over the next few days, I will have people watch you closely. Don't try any tricks, go to the marriage obediently. He slammed the door and left. After that day, Julian never came to the dungeons again. Willow had no desire to see him either. But as she lay there, her wounds slowly being treated, she suddenly thought of Rosalind. She had been locked in the dungeons for days. Did Rosalind know? She must be frantic with worry. Willow forced herself to her feet, enduring the pain, and pushed open the cell door. 2 long blades immediately crossed in front of her. She looked at the guards steadily. Take me out. I need to see someone. The general has ordered that you are not to leave, a guard said, hesitating for a moment before adding, if there is someone you wish to see, I can fetch them. The cold glint of the blades at her neck left Willow no choice but to concede. I want to see my personal handmaiden, Rosalind. She is in the service yard. The guard returned quickly, but the words he brought were something Willow could never have imagined. Rosalind committed an offense. The mistress just ordered her to be given 50 strokes with the paddle. She died halfway through. The blood drained from Willow's face. She felt as if her soul had been ripped from her body, and she collapsed to the ground. Rosa is dead, she murmured. Her bright eyes gradually turned scarlet, filling with a thick mist on the verge of tears that would not fall. Her expression twisted into a frenzy, and she threw herself forward, heedless of her own life. The guards blocked her with their blades, but she did not flinch. She pressed her white neck against the sharp edge, drawing a thin line of blood. Seeing her madness, the guards didn't dare to stop her further. The general had given strict orders to watch this woman carefully. If she died, they would be finished. Fine, let her go out, the guard thought. As long as I keep an eye on her, nothing will go wrong. After a moment's thought, the guard let Willow pass, following closely behind her. Willow ran without stopping. Even when the pain in her leg caused her to stumble and fall into the mud, she stubbornly gritted her teeth, got up, and continued on, limping. The weather grew colder, and a light rain began to fall from the gloomy sky. Soon, snow would begin to fall in the capital. Willow's hair and face were soaked with rain. She wiped it away casually, swallowing the coppery taste of blood that rose in her throat. The guard followed behind her, making no move to help. But he was inwardly astonished at how frail this woman was. She looked like nothing more than a dried-out, empty shell. Rosalind's body lay bare on the muddy ground. Her eyes were wide open, 2 lines of bloody tears streaking her cheeks. She had not died in peace. A sound of grief, so suppressed and twisted it was barely human, escaped Willow's lips. She fell to her knees, her dress and shoes caked in filthy mud, and with trembling hands, she gathered Rosalind's body into her arms. "Rosa, I want to go home." Willow sobbed softly, lost in a daze. "I'm sorry, Rosa, I really tried. I tried so hard. He won't let me live." She didn't dare to cry out loud. No one would save her. Through her haze of grief, she felt someone forcibly pull Rosalind's body from her arms. A voice muttered, "Tisk, wrap this corpse in a straw mat and throw it in the mass grave. Then burn some mugwort to get rid of the bad luck." She tried desperately to hold on, to cling to her last connection in this world. But she could only watch helplessly as Rosalind's body was dragged away like a dead pig, gradually disappearing from sight. Willow didn't know how she made it back. She huddled in a corner of the room, her gaze vacant and wooden. The last spark of life in her had been extinguished. She heard footsteps and a man's disdainful, mocking voice. "It's just a dead handmaiden. What's with all the drama? Is this another one of your pathetic tricks to get my attention?" Willow didn't move. An inexplicable tightness gripped Julian's chest. He suddenly kicked Willow in the waist, sending her rolling across the floor. "Get up, put on the wedding dress. Prepare to leave for Lixao, and keep your mouth shut on the road. Don't say a word." According to the plan, they should have poisoned Willow's vocal cords to prevent her from speaking and jeopardizing the mission. But for some reason, Julian had decided against it. Seeing Willow like this, he had actually felt a sliver of pity. Willow was pushed into a grand red palanquin. The veil was lowered, hiding her exquisite makeup. She was like a beautiful, lifelike puppet. She was transported back 5 years to when she had also sat in a palanquin, filled with anticipation, as she was carried through the gates of the general's estate. After the ceremony and the ritual wedding wine, she had lifted her flushed, slightly tipsy face to kiss the man she deeply adored. But Julian had turned his head away, a cold smile on his lips, and called her shameless. He had said, "The person I want to marry is Sylvia. You threw yourself at me. Do you have any sense of decency?" Back then, she had no idea. No idea that this man she loved would bring about the destruction of her family and her own ruin. The wedding procession stopped at the border between the two countries. The crown prince himself had come to receive the bride. Willow could hear people talking outside. It seemed they were taking a short rest. That night, in a state between waking and sleeping, Willow heard the clash of weapons and the sounds of fighting. She flinched and carefully lifted a corner of the curtain to peek out. No one was paying any attention to her. Willow removed her veil and shed the cumbersome outer layer of her robes. Hunching her back, she limped away under the cover of the dark night. She moved faster and faster, the sounds of chaos behind her growing more distant. Willow gasped for breath, her gaze fixed on the dark, silent forest ahead. A twitch played at the corner of her lips. She wanted to smile, but she seemed to have forgotten how. Even if there were tigers and wolves ahead, she felt no fear. She didn't know how long she had walked. Just as she was about to stop and rest, she caught the faint glimmer of a torch in the distance. "Find her if you can't find her. Don't even think about coming back." Julian's voice was faint, but Willow recognized it instantly. She began to tremble violently, her breathing ragged, as if she had seen something terrifying. She dove into the dense bushes, biting down hard on her tongue, and ran for her life. The tip of her tongue was bleeding, and the thick, coppery taste of blood kept her conscious. "She's over there after her in her haste." Branches scratched at Willow's face, adding new, small cuts. After pushing through a thicket, Willow froze. Her heart nearly stopped, her blood turning to ice. Ahead of her was a cliff, but only one thought filled her mind. She would not go back. Even if it meant dying right now, she would never go back. She turned and saw that Julian had caught up. He was getting closer and closer. Willow backed away, step by step, toward the edge of the cliff, her eyes fixed on Julian. Her gaze sent a chill down Julian's spine. He had a terrible feeling. "Willow, where do you think you're going? Come back." Years on the battlefield had honed Julian into a man with an aura as sharp as a sword. He had just killed several men, and his body was still stained with blood. His face was dark and grim, making him look like a god of death. Willow was covered in wounds, but standing there now, she felt an unprecedented sense of peace. With the bottomless abyss at her back, she faced Julian. The cold wind whipping across the mountaintop sent her long black hair flying. She was beautiful, with crimson lips and pearly teeth, her eyes bright and captivating. Even without makeup, she was a natural beauty, drawing the eye of anyone who saw her. Suddenly, she wanted to ask a question, and so she did. She looked at the man not far away. "Julian, do you remember the promise you made to me on the battlefield all those years ago?" Julian's brow furrowed slightly, as if he didn't understand why she was asking. When had he ever seen her on a battlefield? Seeing that he wouldn't even answer this question, Willow smiled a wretched smile. Her red robes were like fire, her expression intense. "Julian, I was your wife for 5 years. In those 5 years, I was obedient, diligent, virtuous, and I cherished you like the apple of my eye. But what did you give me? You destroyed my family, took my child, and subjected me to 18 forms of bloody torture. And in the end, you even sought to erase the last glimmer of hope I had of living in this world." Willow tilted her head back. Above her was a sky full of stars. Her eyes welled with a misty sheen, reflecting the starlight. "Julian, saving you on the battlefield that day was the biggest regret of my life. If only we had never met." "Willow, what do you mean, saving you on the battlefield? Explain yourself." "There's no need." Willow gave Julian one last, desolate smile. "Julian, I am finally free. From this day forward, there is no Willow Thorn, wife of Julian. Our bond is severed, our debts are cleared, and we have nothing more to do with each other." The howling wind drowned out Julian's almost frantic roar. "Willow, what are you doing? Don't you dare!" His roar was cut short. The next second, he watched in horror as the woman in the brilliant red robes spread her arms with a look of release on her face. Without another glance at him, she fell backward, plunging from the cliff's edge. She was smiling. In that moment, she was not the humiliated servant of the general's estate, not the wife of her family's destroyer. She was Willow Weatherly, the most beloved daughter of the Minister of Revenue, Arthur Weatherly. "It's so cold. Father, Mother, Rosa, I'm coming home." By the time Julian reacted, he had already lunged forward, his hand outstretched, trying to grab her. But it was too late. He scrambled desperately, but he couldn't even touch the hem of her sleeve. Julian stood on the edge of the cliff, staring in disbelief into the black abyss below. After a long moment, he coughed up a large mouthful of blood. On the battlefield, faced with open blades and hidden arrows, Julian had always gritted his teeth and swallowed his own blood, never showing a hint of fear. But now, he couldn't swallow this mouthful. His expression was twisted and terrifying, his aura frigid. He looked like a demon from hell. "Willow, Willow." A splitting headache seized Julian. His eyes were so red they looked as if they were bleeding. He kept whispering her name, feeling as if something inside his head was about to burst forth. He coughed up another mouthful of blood, and this time, a small white worm came out with it. The worm writhed for a moment, then quickly died. All of his memories rushed back, flooding his mind. In an instant, he remembered everything. He remembered the young lady of the Weatherly family at the Scholars' Gala, bright and bold, her smile as sweet as honey. He remembered Willow carrying him off the battlefield day and night, remembered her staying by his side, tending to his wounds without a moment's rest. He remembered Sylvia tricking him into drinking a cup of tea, a tea that contained a love goo worm. Under the worm's influence, he had mistakenly believed that Sylvia was the one who had saved him on the battlefield, and he had become determined to marry her. The small white worm was the love parasite. It was a forbidden art of the Western shamans, something that had not been seen in the world for many years, existing only in legends. If someone was infected with a love goo worm, they would become infatuated with the person who carried the mother worm, completely devoted to them. And he had forgotten all his feelings and memories of Willow, leaving only Sylvia's suggestion that he despise Willow. It was as if a knife was carving into his heart, slicing away his flesh, piercing his very soul. Julian went mad, kneeling on the cliff's edge, calling out Willow again and again. "Willow, I was wrong, Willow. Please come back." His hands trembled as he clawed at the ground, tearing his fingertips to shreds. Julian laughed and cried, his eyes filled with a deep, despairing sorrow. 2 lines of bloody tears streamed down his face. The usually cold-hearted general was now utterly broken, begging an empty void for the return of someone who would never come back. "Willow, don't go. It was all my fault." Once, he too had admired Willow. Perhaps he hadn't realized it, but every time he saw Willow's pain and despair, his own heart had twisted in agony. The love goo worm had been deeply rooted in his heart, entwined with his veins and flesh. It was only after witnessing Willow's tragic death, in a moment of extreme emotional turmoil, that he had managed to force the worm out. The blood in his body roiled, his pulse was unstable, and his face was so pale he looked as if he might collapse at any moment. Julian knelt there on the cliff's edge for a day and a night, until one of his subordinates, unable to watch any longer, knocked him unconscious and carried him back to the capital. Julian had a long, profound dream. In the dream, his Willow was small and thin, being bullied and beaten in the general's estate. He saw her unable to defend herself, suffering torture and hardship. He saw the hideous scar on her face, and he saw her crying before she jumped from the cliff, saying she never wanted to meet him again in the next life. Julian reached out desperately, trying with all his might to hold her, but he could only touch empty air, his hands falling limply to his sides. "How could you not want to meet me again?" he thought. "I owe you so much, a lifetime isn't enough to repay you. If there is a next life, even if you hate me, resent me, kill me, or punish me, I will never let you go again." Sylvia lay on the couch, her eyes closed in repose. Her personal handmaiden stood beside her, respectfully feeding her fruit from a platter. Suddenly, Sylvia's eyes flew open. She shot to her feet, knocking the fruit platter from the handmaiden's hands. Her breathing was rapid, her back soaked with a cold sweat, her face a shifting mask of green and white. The love goo worm had been broken. How could this be? She had planted the goo worm herself. Unless she died, there was no one in the world who knew how to break its hold. Sylvia bit her lower lip so hard that a trickle of dark blood escaped. The mother worm in her chest had died from the backlash, and the pain was excruciating. Julian had broken free of the goo worm's control on his own. How was that possible? When her mother had given her the goo worm, she had indeed mentioned that if the host's love was deep enough, it was possible to force the worm out in a moment of extreme pain and despair, restoring their memories. The goo worm was not to be used lightly. Willow, why, even when Julian was under the worm's control, completely devoted to her, did he still feel pity for Willow and remember everything? Sylvia's eyes turned red with jealousy, her gaze dark and venomous, startling the handmaiden beside her. She slapped the handmaiden across the face in a fit of rage. "Useless wench, you can't even hold a platter steady." The handmaiden fell to her knees, crying and begging for mercy. "Forgive me, my lady, I deserve to die." Sylvia paced the room anxiously. What should she do? When Julian returned, she would surely suffer images of Willow's recent miserable state, and Julian's iron-fisted methods flashed through her mind. The more she thought, the more terrified she became, a chill running down her spine. She quickly gathered her gold and silver, packed a bag, and prepared to flee. But she hadn't expected the general's estate to be so heavily guarded. Julian's personal guards watched over their mistress day and night. Even when she made excuses to go out, she couldn't shake the highly trained, elusive shadow guards. She was a delicate woman, unable to fight her way out. Sylvia's face was dark, and she gritted her teeth in frustration, but she was helpless. After being respectfully escorted back to her room by the guards, she collapsed to the floor. She held her head in her hands, muttering to herself, "Julian was truly devoted to me for so long. He'll surely remember our past affection. Maybe he had already fallen for me." After managing to calm herself, about 4 or 5 days passed. Finally, in a state of constant anxiety, Sylvia saw Julian's most trusted subordinate, Thorn 1. Without a word, he tied Sylvia up and threw her into the dungeon's torture chamber. The drug Thorn 1 had used to knock Julian out was not very strong. He should have woken up after an hour. Strangely, Julian had slept for 3 days and 3 nights before opening his eyes. Though he had slept for 3 days, His eyes were bloodshot, as if he hadn't slept at all. The first thing Julian did upon waking was to order Sylvia's arrest and to have every torture that had been used on Willow be used on her. Seeing Thorn One's stunned, speechless expression, Julian's face was cold, his eyes dark and lifeless. After the torture, question her about everything she has done over the years. The treasonous letters, the goo worm, the Weatherly family. He closed his eyes, hiding the pain in his expression. She has done too much. Thorn One silently accepted the order and rode back to the general's estate at top speed. Julian looked up at the gray, heavy sky, his mood oppressive. That fiery, resolute woman, how could she have any connection with Lixao? He remembered Willow, alone, crossing the corpse-strewn gorge pass to carry him back. Her beautiful face was covered in dirt and blood, but when she pushed back the wet hair from her face, her eyes were filled with admiration and adoration. She had said, "General, you are the hero of the Dayan dynasty, saving the people from fire and water. You cannot die, you must live to protect your home and country." He had been so wrong. That day, Willow had laughed at him for being blind, saying she never used charcoal. She was right to laugh. The daughter of the Weatherly family had been pampered her whole life. She was accustomed to using the finest wolf hair brushes. Why would she stoop to using a charcoal stick that blackened her hands? A sweet, metallic taste rose in Julian's throat. He felt the urge to vomit blood again. Before returning to his estate, he first went to a deserted mountain. He knelt before a grave and kowtowed 3 times. The simple, plain tombstone had only a few hastily carved words. The tomb of Arthur Weatherly and his wife. I'm sorry," Julian sobbed, his voice choked. "I know I was wrong. I will come back another day to give you a proper tombstone and a proper funeral. I swear it." He did not call him father-in-law. If Willow were still alive, she would probably scold him, saying he was unworthy to call her father that. Sylvia was on the verge of madness. She had been thrown into the torture chamber. As the various instruments of torture were applied to her, she finally understood what it meant to wish for death but be unable to die. How had Willow endured this? She was just a sheltered young lady. How could she have held on? The torture chamber was dark and sunless, constantly filled with the thick smell of blood, tormenting Sylvia's fragile nerves. When Julian stepped inside, he saw Sylvia in a pathetic state, weeping and begging for mercy, all semblance of her former self gone. Sylvia had lost all her previous composure and grace. Her mouth was now filled with vicious curses and insults. She had always been a coward who feared death and craved vanity. It had taken less than an hour of torture for her to confess everything. Sylvia was just an illegitimate daughter of the Weatherly family. Her mother was a lowly dancing girl who had climbed into Arthur Weatherly's bed. Later, when she came to him for money, he had been forced to acknowledge Sylvia's existence. But Arthur resented being manipulated by the dancing girl, and his dislike extended to her child. Willow's mother, as the official wife, naturally had no love for the child of a schemer. Willow had been adored from birth, getting whatever she wanted, living a proud and carefree life. Sylvia, on the other hand, had lived a difficult life, unloved by her father and mother, constantly living in Willow's shadow like a pathetic insect. As she spoke, she began to cry, her tears making her look pitiful and wronged. Thorn One raised an eyebrow and kicked Sylvia hard. "Stop your act. As far as I know, the Weatherly family was a distinguished, scholarly household. No matter how much they disliked you, they would not have mistreated you." The kick left Sylvia pale, and she let out a sharp cry of pain. Julian smiled coldly. How had he never seen this woman's hypocritical, jealous nature before? He had truly been blind. At the same time, a sharp pain shot through his heart. Even Thorn One could see the holes in Sylvia's story, but he had been unable to see the truth. "If you won't tell the truth, then continue the torture." Julian ignored Sylvia's tearful, pleading glances. He cracked his whip, the lash striking Sylvia across the face. "Ah!" Sylvia's face contorted in pain, a flash of venomous hatred in her eyes. She clutched her bleeding face and screamed at Julian. "Julian, You've ruined my face. How will I ever show myself in public again? Julian calmly put away the whip and wiped his hands with a handkerchief. I will make you repay 1,000 times over the suffering that Willow endured. Don't worry, I won't let you die so easily. Sylvia began to tremble violently. She glanced at the terrifying instruments of torture around her and broke down, screaming. You married me, but you never touched me. Was it because of that bitch Willow? You fell in love with her, didn't you? Ha 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 ha, no wonder you broke the goo worm's hold. Her face was twisted in a crazed smile. Willow, you call her so intimately. Julian, she was tortured so horribly. Weren't you the one leading the charge? Fine, you want to know what I did? I'll tell you. The truth is, I was faking my serious illness. Ha. My goal was to make you steal Willow's Lotus Heart Pill. Julian's pupils contracted. Sylvia continued in a mocking tone. When Willow was a child, a high monk read her fortune and predicted she would not live past 22. Her 22nd birthday is in half a year. Of course, I had to take her only life-saving medicine. As long as she died, I would be happy. The treasonous letters were also forgeries I had someone plant in her room. I heard she nearly died in the dungeons, that blood was everywhere. I was so happy that day, I ate an extra bowl of rice. Slap. Julian's hand was still in the air. Sylvia's head snapped to the side from the force of the blow, and she coughed up a mouthful of blood. She slowly turned her head back, a crimson handprint on her cheek. She licked the blood from the corner of her lips and smiled sinisterly. Julian's hands were shaking with rage. Sylvia's words about the prophecy of Willow not living past 22 echoed in his mind, and he felt a pain like a knife twisting in his heart. The prophecy had come true. Half a year before her 22nd birthday, she had died a resolute death in a cold, deep abyss, not even leaving him a body to bury. Julian left the torture chamber in a daze. Behind him, he could hear Sylvia's desperate cries and pleas for him to spare her, that she didn't want to die. But no matter how heart-wrenchingly she cried, Julian never gave her another glance. The report on the investigation into the Weatherly family lay on Julian's desk in his study. Thorn One stood beside him, his voice low. The Weatherly family is no more. I found some of their former servants. They confirmed that it was indeed Sylvia who drugged Willow, trying to have her lose her honor to a lecherous gambler. Arthur Weatherly could bear it no longer, and disowned the wicked Sylvia. He kept the matter quiet to preserve what little face he could. The Weatherly family had provided Sylvia with everything she needed and had raised her for over a decade. But Sylvia herself was unwilling to live in Willow's shadow. She held grudges and forgot kindness, her heart cold and her jealousy of Willow so intense it was like poison. After Willow saved Julian from the battlefield, she had placed him in the care of a farming family. Because she had run away from home, she had to return to the capital as soon as he was safe. While Julian was recovering in the countryside, he was discovered by Sylvia, who was visiting a distant relative nearby. After that, Sylvia had planted the goo worm in him. He had become lost in false memories, believing with all his heart that it was Sylvia who had saved him. And Sylvia, being extremely vindictive, had used her new hold over the general to unscrupulously instigate him to help her get revenge. Sylvia had pretended that she had been mistreated by the Weatherly family, her soft words planting the most rebellious ideas, making him want to teach them a lesson. Originally, Julian had only intended to cause some trouble for the Weatherly family, to make them uncomfortable for bullying his beloved. But at that time, the Emperor had already been planning to eliminate the Weatherly family. The Minister of Revenue, Arthur Weatherly, was an old ally of the Empress Dowager and knew many secrets of the court and the royal family's dark past. The Empress Dowager had controlled the court for many years, treating the emperor as a puppet and intending to place her own son, the second prince, on the throne. The emperor saw the Empress Dowager as an enemy, and, by extension, the Weatherly family as a thorn in his side that he desperately wanted to remove. It just so happened that Julian had handed him a perfect weapon. Julian was well aware of this. Even if he hadn't suggested dealing with the Weatherly family, the emperor would have eventually found a way to destroy them. The fall of the Weatherly family was, in a way, destined. But Julian, in an effort to curry favor with the emperor and to please Sylvia, had willingly provided false testimony and forged account books, accusing Arthur Weatherly of embezzling military funds and conspiring against the crown. In the end, he, Julian Thorne, bore an undeniable guilt. Julian lowered his head, his hands clenched into fists so tight they drew blood. His heart felt as if it were being consumed by fire, an excruciating, soul-searing pain. How heartbroken and desperate must Willow have been when she learned that he was the one who had destroyed her family. When she fell from a cherished young lady to a lowly laundry maid, bullied and trampled upon, how much must she have hated him? The mere thought of it made Julian's heart ache so much he could barely breathe. He wished he could take her place, to bear all her suffering for her. Seeing his general in this state, Thorne one couldn't help but sigh. No wonder the general wanted to investigate every single detail. He wanted to see the full truth with his own eyes, to force himself to face reality. Thorne one had only met Willow a few times. His only impression was of a gentle yet passionate young woman. The only bad thing was that the general disliked her, and it seemed she had been terribly bullied. After hearing Sylvia's words in the torture chamber, all he felt was a deep sympathy and pity for her. Such a good person to have died so young. Thorne one looked up at the sky outside the window. Suddenly, he said in a low, surprised voice, "General, look, it's snowing." Julian stared blankly for a moment, then shot to his feet and ran outside like a madman. Snowflakes fell on his shoulders and in his hair, melting into a cold dampness. Julian was wearing only a thin inner robe, yet he ran wildly through the swirling snow. Even with his tough constitution, he couldn't withstand the cold. He shivered, but he didn't stop. He ran to his room. The sight of the personal items Sylvia had given him filled him with disgust. Julian gathered them up and threw them out the door like trash, ordering someone to dispose of them. Even burning them would be too much. The foul smoke would contaminate his estate. He rummaged through his belongings, searching for the protective talisman Willow had given him. But he couldn't find it anywhere. Julian felt as if all the strength had been drained from his body. He collapsed onto the cold floor. His mind replayed the image of Willow's bright, expressive eyes, which seemed to speak. He remembered her stopping him timidly, her eyes shining as she shyly handed him a protective talisman. She had told him she had embroidered it herself, and that it had been blessed at the National Temple for 100 days. It would ward off evil, calm his spirit, and keep him safe. And later he had thrown the talisman into a pond right in front of her, saying coldly, "Stop with these little tricks." Julian slammed his fist into the ground, again and again, until his knuckles were a bloody pulp and his bones were broken. A youth who does not understand love and hate experiences the most heart-stopping moments of his life. He wanted to kill his past self, the one who couldn't distinguish between love and hate. Thorne one tried to stop him, but Julian ignored him, lost in his madness, a heartbreaking, beast-like roar tearing from his throat. Julian ordered Willow's former courtyard to be sealed off. The clothes she had worn and the jewelry she had owned had not yet been disposed of by Sylvia. Perhaps she had been too complacent, or perhaps she had disdained to set foot in the remote side courtyard, but Sylvia had never gone to Willow's room. As for Sylvia's main courtyard, Julian had it cleared out and burned to the ground. In Sylvia's room, the servants found the jade pendant Willow had asked Rosalind to sell. Under interrogation, Sylvia's personal handmaiden confessed readily. Sylvia had happened to see Rosalind sneaking out to sell the pendant and had simply taken it from her. Sylvia had insisted that the pendant was hers, that Rosalind had stolen it. She had Rosalind dragged away and beaten, while she gleefully hid the pendant away. After all, the pendant had the character for Weatherly on it. It was indeed a family heirloom. If she claimed it was hers, who would dare say it belonged to Willow? The handmaiden knew the truth but had not dared to speak up. Now, with Sylvia locked in the dungeons, and remembering the slap Sylvia had given her, she had no qualms about betraying her fallen former mistress. After hearing this, Julian wanted to have Sylvia executed by 1,000 cuts, but Sylvia had, in a way, done him a favor. She had preserved the last thing he had of Willow's. He threaded the jade pendant onto a red cord, a cord tied with his own life force, and wore it close to his heart. He would often take it out, gaze at it, caress it, and press a kiss to its surface. Every night, Julian would sleep in Willow's room. Only by leaning against her bed could he find a peaceful slumber. Otherwise, he would be tormented by dreams of Willow's face, trapped in a nightmare of regret. Before sleeping, he would hold Willow's memorial tablet, gently and meticulously wiping it, his affectionate gestures as if he were caressing his wife's face. He tormented himself, growing thinner by the day, sleeping only 2 or 3 hours a night. He would wake before dawn and devote himself to acts of atonement. He sent men to the cliff where Willow had jumped, ordering them to find a way to the bottom and search for her body. Then, he sought an audience with the second prince, who had long harbored rebellious ambitions, and offered to help him usurp the throne. Julian had been named the valiant general, a testament to his loyalty to the emperor. But that man was the main reason for the destruction of Willow's family. As long as he was on the throne, the Weatherly name would never be cleared of its false accusations. Everyone who harmed her must die, Julian thought coldly, including myself. When Julian's iron cavalry stormed the palace, the emperor was in disbelief, his finger trembling as he pointed at Julian, cursing him as a traitor who would die a horrible death. Julian's heart was unmoved, as calm as that of a cold-blooded monster. His hand was swift and precise as he slit the emperor's throat. "I will die a horrible death," he said impassively. "It is my retribution." The second prince ascended the throne as Emperor Chengwei and fulfilled his promise to Julian, exonerating the Weatherly family. The witnesses from years ago recanted their testimony, and with the new emperor's order to investigate, the truth quickly came to light. The Weatherly family's name was cleared. Arthur Weatherly was posthumously honored, and his name would no longer be tarnished by slander. The second prince wanted to promote Julian, but Julian refused, stating his desire to resign from his post. The second prince tried several times to persuade him to stay, but seeing that his mind was made up, he had no choice but to grant him the title of Marquis of Valor, reward him with vast lands and treasures, and let him go. Julian returned to his original estate. The men he had sent to find Willow's body searched for over half a year, but found nothing. Perhaps she had been eaten by wild beasts. Each time Thorn One reported the news, Julian's faint hope dwindled, until all that remained was a heart of dead ashes. "Forget it, have everyone withdraw. We'll stop searching." His eyes were red as he forced himself to say the words he least wanted to say. He bought a plot of land near the National Temple and had tombstones erected for Arthur and his wife, and for all the members of the Weatherly clan, giving them a grand burial. For his Willow, he buried a set of her most beautiful clothes, a cenotaph in her honor. On the tombstone, he carved the words himself, "The tomb of my late wife, Willow Weatherly." Julian had been busy for several months. One day, as he was touching the jade pendant around his neck, he suddenly remembered that he hadn't checked on Sylvia in a long time. He went to the dungeons, his face cold. He found that Sylvia had gone completely mad. Tortured daily, with a cloth stuffed in her mouth to prevent her from biting her tongue and taking her own life, the weak-willed woman had long since broken. Her hair was a mess, her clothes were in tatters, her hamstrings had been cut, leaving her crippled, and her right hand was useless. In a fit of madness, she had gouged out one of her own eyes. One moment she was laughing hysterically, stuffing dirt into her mouth. The next, upon seeing Julian, her laughter died, and she scurried into a corner like a frightened quail, trembling and holding her head in her hands. Julian didn't even glance at her, simply staring at her for a long moment, his expression blank. Execute her by inches, throw her body to the dogs in the city market. He uttered a sentence that sent a chill down the spine of even the most hardened jailer and walked out of the dungeons without another word. Outside, summer had arrived. The warm, golden sunlight enveloped him, lending a touch of humanity to the cold-faced god of death. Julian raised his hand. The dazzling light shone through his fingers, so bright it made him cry. He let out a low laugh. Sylvia wasn't the only one who had gone mad. He himself had lost his mind long ago, hadn't he? After all this was done, Julian truly became a walking corpse. He would stare into space more and more often, his mind drifting for longer and longer periods. He began to have artisans build a tomb for himself next to Willow's. Thorn One watched as his marquis descended further into madness. He was anxious but helpless. Fortunately, while he had been busy working to clear the Weatherly family's name, he had learned something. Arthur Weatherly had a son, Alaric, who had been sickly since childhood and had been secretly raised in a Buddhist temple. No one outside the family knew that Arthur still had a son. Arthur and his wife's only wish for their son was that he grow up safely. They had forbidden him from returning to the capital before he came of age, fearing that if too many people knew of his existence, death would find him and take him away. It was Alaric himself who, after coming of age, had sought out Thorn One and begged for the general's help in rebuilding the Weatherly family. Thorn One thought that the Marquis would surely be revitalized by this news. As he expected, Julian was overjoyed. He had been planning to end his own sinful life, but now he had found a reason to live. Helping Alaric restore the Weatherly family's honor became the pillar that supported Julian, the path for him to continue his atonement. This way, when he died and met Willow in the underworld, perhaps she would be a little less angry. Even just a little would she forgive him, even a little. Julian regained some of his former martial dignity. He took Alaric in as his adopted son and devoted himself to teaching him, personally imparting all the knowledge he had accumulated throughout his life. Julian used all his connections and wealth to cultivate Alaric. 7 or 8 years passed. Alaric rose to the rank of Vice Minister of the Grand Court of Revision. His first act in office was to reopen the old case of the Weatherly family, accusing Julian Thorn of framing a court official and harming the loyal, and of failing to control his household, allowing his servants to humiliate his official wife and the second prince. The man Julian had personally placed on the throne had long since lost himself in the struggles for power. He had grown increasingly suspicious, wary of the 800,000 troops Julian commanded, fearing that Julian would rebel against him just as he had rebelled against the previous emperor. So he personally approved the memorial listing Julian's crimes and sentenced him to be branded on the face, a mark of a criminal, and exiled to the harsh, cold borderlands, never to return to the capital for the rest of his life. Julian was not surprised by this outcome. He even looked at Alaric from across the court hall, trying to see in the young man's features, which vaguely resembled Willow's, a memory of the person he had lost. He mouthed silently, "Well done. If the members of the Weatherly family knew that you had endured for so many years to avenge them, they would surely rest in peace." Alaric had been raised well by him. He would surely have a bright future, a smooth and successful official career. Julian finally closed his eyes in satisfaction. Before his exile, he asked Emperor Chengwei for a chance to pay his respects at his late wife's grave. A flicker of their old friendship remained in the emperor's heart, and he agreed. A few days later, a man with sword-like brows and starry eyes stood before Willow's grave. He gently and lovingly brushed the dust and weeds from the tombstone, his gaze tender. The ugly black brand on his forehead did not detract from his handsome features. "Willow, this is the last time I will come to see you." He remembered Willow's resolute words before she jumped from the cliff and smiled bitterly. She had wished for him to be betrayed by all and left alone and helpless, and so it had come to pass. He was now alone and without support, facing a bleak fate of lifelong exile. He would spend the rest of his life alone, guarding an endless solitude, to die in sorrow and regret. "Willow, Willow," Willow's brow furrowed. In her daze, she faintly heard someone calling her name. A light touch on her forehead felt like a gentle stream flowing into her, clearing her mind, making her thoughts transparent and lucid. She slowly opened her eyes and saw a familiar, kind face. Willow stared for a moment, then a flood of memories rushed into her mind. She clutched her throbbing head. As the memories returned, her starry eyes grew brighter and more resolute. The truth was, Willow was not originally the daughter of the Weatherly family. She was the daughter of the sect master of the Jade Emanation sect, the #1 sect in the cultivation world. She was the most talented junior in the cultivation world in thousands of years, the most anticipated and celebrated prodigy of the righteous path. She was also the only person in the world with a celestial sword physique, a true child of destiny, a favorite of fate. She had reached the peak of her cultivation in just a few hundred years and was about to ascend. She had already ceased aging at 21, and though she had lived for centuries, she still looked like a young woman in her early 20s, with a slender, delicate frame. Before her ascension, she had already endured 3,000 lightning tribulations in the ascension pool. All that remained was one love trial. If she could successfully pass the love trial, she could ascend to immortality. Cultivators who wished to undergo a love trial had to wait for the Myriad Illusions abode, which opened once every 10 years. In the Myriad Illusions abode, a cultivator's memories would be temporarily erased, and they would be given an identity and a destiny arranged by the abode. Usually, it was a life of misery, unrequited love, and suffering. If the cultivator could not comprehend the mortal world and sever their karmic ties, they would be trapped in an endless loop until they died of exhaustion. For this reason, many had died during the love trial, failing to achieve immortality. Willow returned from her trance and looked at the middle-aged man before her with a complex expression. This man was the master of the Jade Emanation sect, Arthur Weatherly, her real father. Seeing her awake, Arthur leaned in worriedly and stroked her head. He had been so worried. His daughter had been as innocent as a blank sheet of paper, with no experience in love. He had been terrified that she would be trapped in the love trial and unable to escape. Now, seeing her safe and sound, Arthur finally breathed a sigh of relief. "My dear daughter, are you tired? Do you feel any discomfort?" Feeling the warm, broad hand on her head, Willow's nose tingled, and she burst into tears, throwing her arms around her father. "Father, do you know, in the Myriad Illusions abode, you were the minister of revenue in the mortal realm, and I was your daughter, and then you were beheaded by the emperor, and our whole family was executed, and I was so sad, sob." Arthur was both amused and distressed. He patted his daughter's back. There, don't cry. The Myriad Illusions abode often assigns familiar friends and family to make the experience more immersive. Now that my Willow is out, it was all fake. It's all over. Father is here. Willow wiped her nose and tears all over Arthur's robes. She looked like a little stray cat as she sniffled and nodded. "Come, I'll go announce to the whole sect that you have successfully passed your tribulation," Arthur said with a hearty laugh, looking quite proud. "You've just come out of the abode, so rest for a bit. After you say goodbye to your fellow disciples, you can ascend in peace." Willow wiped her tears with her sleeve and mumbled an affirmative. After her father left, Willow lowered her eyes and looked at the sword hanging by her bed. The blade was a smoky cyan, forged with images of floating clouds and ink-wash mountains and rivers. It was her life-bound sword, named Swiftwing, signifying lightness, speed, and great ambition. Willow cultivated the way of apathy. Since ancient times, those with the celestial sword physique had all borne the great responsibility of saving the common people. And without exception, they had all walked this path. The great Tao is without emotion, but it holds all living beings in its heart. The way of apathy was the fastest path of cultivation, but it also meant that its practitioners had to abandon many things, such as the 7 emotions and 6 desires. Once she passed her love trial, she would sever her emotional ties and go to the celestial realm. With a thought, Swiftwing flew from its sheath with a clear hum, its cold light flashing. She let out a soft laugh. Since it was all fake, she would simply forget everything that had happened in the Myriad Illusions abode. The news that the youngest junior sister of the Jade Emanation sex master was about to ascend spread throughout the sect in less than 2 days. Arthur had had his daughter late in life and had taken on many disciples before Willow was born, so Willow was the youngest of her generation. Oh, but she was about to become a senior sister herself. While she was undergoing her tribulation, the sect had taken in a new junior brother, who was only 7 or 8 years old. The disciples of the Jade Emanation sect were all very fond of Willow. They came to congratulate her every day, insisting on giving her gifts. She had a fondness for pastries from the mortal realm, so some disciples went out of their way to buy some for her to win her favor. Willow accepted them all with a faint smile. During this time of farewell, she walked through the peaks of the sect one by one. The flowing clouds and flying birds, the high mountains and long rivers, she felt her heart open up. As she closed her eyes in meditation, she was bathed in a warm, white light. Her senior brothers and sisters watched in a daze. But then they saw the youngest junior brother toddle over, pat Willow's leg, and ask to be picked up. He chattered sweetly, his soft, moist eyes wide, saying that he had finally learned a new sword technique and asking his junior sister for praise. Willow wasn't angry at being interrupted. She stroked his head and gave him a piece of malt candy. Her skin was whiter than snow, her features cool and serene, like a piece of jade nurtured in a 1,000-year-old spring, a fairy from the 9 heavens. Not far away, the eldest senior brother whispered, "Do you feel like our junior sister has matured overnight?" The second senior sister nodded vigorously in agreement. "I think so. She's become colder, not as cheerful and playful as before." The eldest senior brother looked horrified. "Hiss, that love trial really leaves a mark. It even changed her personality. Senior brother, senior sister, what are you talking about?" Willow's voice suddenly appeared behind them like a ghost. The eldest senior brother jumped in fright and retreated 10 miles in an instant. The second senior sister shivered, then forced a smile when she saw it was Willow. "Ahem, Willow, it's nothing. We were just discussing what the celestial realm is like." Willow nodded. "I will come back to visit Father and all of you often. When I do, I will have a long talk with you, senior sister, and tell you in detail what the celestial realm is like." The second senior sister coughed dryly. "All right, then. You must bring back some fun and delicious things for me, Willow." After saying goodbye to everyone she knew, the day of Willow's ascension finally arrived. Among the golden clouds that filled the sky, a long ladder of gold and jade faintly appeared, extending down, inch by inch, until it reached Willow's feet. This was the ascension ladder. Only those who were ascending were worthy to step on it. Under the countless gazes of envy and jealousy, Willow stepped onto the ladder and began to climb, one step at a time. Almost the entire cultivation world had come to witness the ascension of this cultivation prodigy, to bask in the light of the righteous path. As Willow climbed higher and higher, she looked down from above and could only see a dense sea of heads. Just as she was about to look away and focus on her climb, her gaze suddenly caught a place where demonic energy was surging. Willow's eyes sharpened. Her divine sense spread out, and she saw 2 demons in a forest outside the Jade Emanation sect's gate, holding a beautiful, struggling young girl, about to strike her down. Without a second thought, Swiftwing flew from its sheath with a clear hum. Willow stepped onto her sword and shot straight toward them. The golden clouds in the sky slowly turned dark, and the sky grew gloomy, a storm brewing. The crowd below watched as the ascending woman suddenly turned back halfway, all of them stunned. They looked at each other in confusion. Was this genius prodigy not going to ascend? Willow's sword energy was like a rainbow as it shot towards the 2 demons. Caught off guard, they were thrown back several meters. The beautiful young girl, now free, stopped crying and stared blankly at Willow, who had descended from the sky. Willow held Swiftwing, the tip of the sword pointed at one of the demons. "To abduct a young girl in broad daylight," she said coldly, "is utterly despicable." The demon's face turned ugly. He had naturally heard of Willow's name and knew he couldn't defeat her. He gritted his teeth and reached for something in his robes, but Willow had anticipated his move. With a single strike, she ended the demon's life. She turned to look for the other demon but found no trace of him. He had used an invisibility spell and fled while she was dealing with his companion. Let him run, Willow thought, silently wiping the blood from her sword. Humans and demons had been at odds for many years. These two were clearly evildoers, and this was not the first time they had done something like this. Their methods were practiced. She bore the responsibility of saving the common people, so it was only natural for her to step in. She had her own principles. She only killed the wicked, and she swore to protect those around her with her sword. The beautiful young girl spoke timidly. You're the young lady who was about to ascend, right? Thank you for saving me." Willow glanced at her and chuckled. "You look to be no more than 15 or 16 yourself. Why are you calling me a young lady? You should call me big sister." The girl clutched her gauze skirt, hesitated for a moment, and then said carefully, I'm not a human cultivator. I'm the princess of the Phoenix clan from the celestial realm, Seraphina Celeste." She bit her lip in shame, her voice growing smaller. "I ran away with someone I loved, but I didn't know he was a wolf in sheep's clothing. He sold me to those two demons. They were going to offer me to the demon lord. If it weren't for you, I would be dead. Thank you for saving me. Can you take me with you when you ascend, back to the celestial realm?" Willow looked Seraphina up and down, a little surprised. She had just saved someone on a whim, and it turned out to be the princess of the Phoenix clan. It was said that the Phoenix clan of the celestial realm were descendants of the ancient divine phoenixes. Their numbers were few, but their status in the celestial realm was very high. They could practically do whatever they wanted. Though Seraphina looked like a young girl, she was actually 3,000 years old. But for a phoenix, 3,000 years was equivalent to being a teenager in human years. "Can't you go back on your own?" "I sneaked out, of course. I didn't bring my immortal passage token." Willow sighed and patted her head comfortingly. "I was halfway up the ascension ladder when I came down. I don't know if I can ascend again in this situation. Besides, there's no precedent for taking someone with you during ascension." "That's easy to solve." Seraphina rushed over and hugged Willow's arm. She felt a gentle aura radiating from Willow that made her want to be close. "Just focus on the Tao you cultivate in your mind, and the ascension ladder will reappear. Then, I'll just drip a drop of my blood onto the ladder to let it recognize me, and I'll be able to go up. As long as you are recognized by the celestial realm, whether you were born there or are about to ascend, the ascension ladder will not reject you." Willow did, as she said, and closed her eyes in meditation. Soon, the dark clouds in the sky receded, and a brilliant light shone down. The ascension ladder reformed. The light converged on Willow, making her look like a fairy descended from heaven, pure and spiritual. Seraphina's round eyes widened in awe. Willow gently patted her hand. "Are you afraid of a little prick?" I'm not afraid of pain." The little phoenix princess blushed, cut her finger, and let a drop of rich, sweet-smelling phoenix blood fall onto the ascension ladder. The ladder immediately shone with a brilliant golden light. Let's go, oh, you haven't told me your name yet," Seraphina chattered, linking her arm with Willow's. "My name is Willow Weatherly. Willow, as in the tree." "Willow, little Willow, what a beautiful name," the princess exclaimed, her eyes curving into crescents in a genuine compliment. The two chatted happily. Willow was completely unaware that the story of her abandoning her ascension to save someone would soon spread throughout the cultivation world. People were in awe of her noble character and her righteous act of punishing evil. Willow, with the chattering little bird Seraphina by her side, arrived in the celestial realm. Everywhere she looked was a scene of splendor, of jade palaces and grand halls, all shrouded in immortal mist. The fragrance of immortal flowers filled the air. Peach trees lined the path to the heavenly gate, stretching for 100 miles, a truly beautiful sight. A kind-faced old man stood at the gate, looking expectantly, as if he had been waiting for some time. "It's the guide. He's the immortal who will take you to register your immortal status and arrange your residence." Seraphina let go of Willow and ran to greet the guide. "Oh, you little troublemaker. How did you get here from the lower realm? Your father is worried sick, you know?" The guide's beard trembled as he saw Seraphina. He grabbed her and looked her over. How did you get so many little cuts? Hurry home now, Seraphina stuck out her tongue sheepishly and giggled. I know. She turned and hugged Willow, reluctant to leave. Little Willow, I have to go now. I've been gone for so long, my parents must be worried sick. I'll come find you to play when I have time. The little princess took out a feather pendant from her robes, a red tassel tied to its end. She solemnly pressed the feather into Willow's hand. Little Willow, this is the tail feather I shed during my first nirvana. It's very precious. When my clansmen see it, it's as if they see me. If you have this, they will all have to bow to you. Pure spiritual energy radiated from the feather. Just holding it made Willow feel nourished and comfortable. Seraphina put on a serious face. You must keep it safe. It's my gift to you. If you are ever poisoned, the feather can also help you. Willow's heart melted. She smiled and pinched her cheek. All right, I will keep it with me always. Go now, don't make your parents worry. Goodbye, little Willow. As she watched the little princess go, the guide stroked his beard, the wrinkles on his face deepening with his smile. His gaze toward Willow became even more benevolent. You're the girl who saved Seraphina, aren't you? Thanks to you. A while ago, Seraphina went down to the mortal realm for a trial and fell in love with a human. She was adamant about marrying him. But then, well, you probably know what happened. She was tricked into eloping. If that man were truly a gentleman, why would he convince her to run away from home and suffer like that? Willow nodded. The princess was deceived. That man sold her to the demons. I saw it happen as I was ascending the ladder. I couldn't just stand by, so I saved her and brought her back to the celestial realm. The old man's eyes widened in anger, his beard nearly flying off his face. He praised the heavens and cursed the man, saying he deserved to die for his great sin. After a quarter of an hour of cursing, he finally remembered his duties. He cleared his throat. Forgive my outburst, young Willow. Your heart is pure and true. That is very good. I have come on heavenly orders to guide you to immortality. From now on, you are a junior immortal of the celestial realm. If you wish to advance to a higher immortal or a Star Lord, you will need to go to the scribe Star Lord to receive missions to slay demons and accumulate immortal power. Willow said, I understand. She possessed the celestial sword physique. It was her duty to protect the world, so she would naturally be diligent in her tasks. Willow followed the guide to her assigned residence, or rather, her palace. She stared in awe at the jade-carved palace and golden pavilions, feeling that her own home was far too shabby in comparison. Was this place really free for her to live in? The guide stroked his beard. You are favored by the heavens, so you naturally receive special treatment. But this is not an exaggeration. Any immortal with a bit of a family background, or any high immortal, lives in a place like this. The guide then took Willow on a tour of the celestial realm, introducing her to the various new faces they met along the way. After settling Willow in, the guide left. Willow looked at her grand palace and sighed helplessly. She decided to report to the scribe Star Lord first. She probably wouldn't be staying in the celestial realm for long anyway. Vanquishing evil was more important. Willow walked in the direction the guide had pointed out. As she passed a palace, she suddenly stopped and looked at the peach blossoms peeking out from the garden. The blossoms had looked withered and on the verge of dying, but as Willow passed, they visibly bloomed again. They were fresh, vibrant, and brilliant. Willow stood for a moment, and seeing the palace gates open, she hesitated for a moment before walking in. The garden was filled with dying flowers, but as she walked, they all gradually bloomed again, a riot of color. Who are you? A soft female voice came from within. A slender, pale hand parted the gauze curtain, and a stunningly beautiful woman walked out. But she looked pale and weak. I am a newly ascended junior immortal, Willow said, bowing politely. The woman smiled gently. So you're a new immortal. No wonder I haven't seen you before. Hello, I am the flower goddess, Linnea. Linnea invited her inside and brewed her a cup of flower tea. You are born with a rich spiritual energy and are favored by the heavens. Even I can't help but feel close to you. No wonder you can make those flowers bloom again. Willow took a sip. As expected of the flower goddess, the tea tasted like immortal dew. Why are all the flowers in the flower goddess's garden withered? A fragile, melancholic expression crossed Linnea face. She set down her teacup and sighed. I am about to fade away. My immortal power is failing. I can't even save myself, let alone these flowers. Willow was shocked. Your rank must be very high. How can your immortal power be failing to the point of fading away? Linnea waved her hand and smiled bitterly. It's all in the past. Immortals can die too. I was gravely injured many years ago, and I can't be healed. Although immortal power can be replenished, no one will replenish it for me, and my body is beyond saving. She hadn't had anyone to talk to for a very, very long time. Seeing this endearing young woman, Linnea couldn't help but share her past with her. The flower goddess, Linnea, had not always been the flower goddess. She was once just a flower spirit, born from a host of flower. When she first gained consciousness, she was saved by Lord Vulcan. From then on, she was deeply in love with him, willingly following him around and doing his bidding. For Vulcan, Linnea cultivated day and night, working diligently until she finally inherited the position of flower goddess. Her name, Linnea, was given to her by Vulcan, and her form was also shaped by his hands. Vulcan had promised to marry her, but he was always cold and distant. One day, Vulcan told her he was gravely ill and needed the mystic ice lotus from the 9 heavens frost domain to be cured. Without a thought for her own safety, she went to the frost domain and, after much hardship, finally obtained the precious mystic ice lotus. When Linnea excitedly brought the lotus to Vulcan, she found him with the 9th princess of the celestial realm, their postures intimate. She heard Vulcan say with his own lips that he had only ever seen Linnea as a substitute for the 9th princess. He had sent her to get the mystic ice, Lotus, to cure the princess's fire poison. Once the princess was cured, Vulcan planned to trick Linnea into going to the mortal realm, and then he would marry the 9th princess. Linnea looked at the 9th princess, whose face was so similar to her own, and then she remembered that the princess's name was Lunaria. She understood everything. She threw the mystic ice lotus at Vulcan's feet, and with a heart of dead ashes, she severed all ties with him, word by word, and walked away. Willow held her teacup and remarked, "This story is so similar to my own experience during my love trial in the Myriad Illusions abode." Linnea was calm now, no longer saddened by the past. She smiled faintly. Perhaps this was my belated love trial. I had not yet undergone it after becoming the flower goddess. Perhaps the 9 heavens frost domain was my 3,000 lightning tribulations. In the frost domain, the cold had seeped into Linnea's bones and soul, leaving her with an incurable frost poison. While Vulcan was protecting and healing the 9th princess, she had been curled up in this palace, alone, enduring the bone-chilling cold. She had thought, I will never love Vulcan again. Linnea dragged her broken body back to the flower goddess's palace, clinging to life. She was dying. The flowers in her garden, which were one with her spirit, naturally could not bloom. Linnea had used what little immortal power she had left to nourish the flowers of the celestial realm, to make it seem as if the flower goddess was still well. The other immortals despised her, looked down on her, and never associated with her. They never visited her palace. Now, on the verge of death, only the newly met Willow was willing to chat with her. I just keep thinking, all these years, with all my courage, this is the end I get, she said with a weak, self-deprecating smile. Willow noticed that she smiled a lot. She must have been a lovely, lively little immortal like Seraphina once. Linnea had done nothing wrong. Her only mistake was to stubbornly press on until she had crashed headfirst into a wall. Willow could do nothing but gently stroke Linnea's head and comfort her. Little one, was I very foolish? Linnea was still smiling, but tears fell as she did. She felt pain, too. Willow let out a long breath, her gaze clear and firm. She shook her head. Love is not a sin. What is past, do not dwell on it. Let me ask you, do you regret it? Linnea was stunned. I do not. She thought for a moment and continued, even if I knew the outcome, I would still have gone to the frost domain. He saved my life, gave me a name and an identity, taught me right from wrong, gave me a new chance at life. Getting the mystic ice lotus was just repaying that debt. As for following him, admiring him, that was my own choice. I do not regret it either, Willow thought. That intense, fiery emotion, she would probably never experience it again. She had loved and she had hated. That was enough. Her heart was still beating, but her emotional ties had been severed. That was the one and only time she would ever love. She said, "So, you are wise and loyal, and you possess a rare and precious sincerity. How could you be foolish?" He did not cherish it. He is the foolish one. Linnea laughed, a happy, genuine laugh. She had not been this joyful in a long time. She laughed until tears welled in her eyes. "Little one, come closer." Willow obediently moved closer. Linnea touched a point between her brows, and a pink light shot into her skin. "I am giving you all of my remaining immortal power. I wish you a smooth, immortal path and a love that is returned." Linnea was very fond of this resilient, cool young woman. "I pass my title of flower goddess to you. If you do not wish to be the flower goddess, you can just hold the title in name, but I ask that you come every day to look after my flowers." Willow touched Swiftwing at her side. "Can I change my name to the sword goddess?" Linnea laughed. "Of course you can. Immortal power is universal. There is no sword goddess in the celestial realm yet. You can change your name. But then there would be no flower goddess. I was originally a host of flower." Linnea's body began to dissipate into the air, turning into glittering specks of light. "I don't like the name Linnea. I want my own name. I don't want even my name to be someone else's shadow." Willow looked at a pot of host of flowers in the corner of the room. The flowers were as white as snow, like jade. Unopened, they looked like the head of a hairpin, emitting a light, elegant fragrance, serene and gentle. "Then let's call you Lynn. Is that all right?" Linnea's eyes widened. Hot tears fell, turning into mist as they joined the rest of her dissipating form. "All right, Lynn, my name is Lynn." It was her own name. Willow stood in silence for a long time. She had seen too much life and death, too much joy and sorrow. She had only just met Lynn, but she was still saddened by her death. They were too similar, both so passionate, both thinking that if they just threw themselves forward, they could warm a mountain of ice. She poured half of her spiritual energy into nourishing the flowers in the room. Only when they were all in full, glorious bloom did she turn to leave. But just then, a tall man stumbled in, roughly pushing Willow aside as he rushed into the room. His hair was completely white, but his eyes were red, his face a mask of grief. "Linnea," the man searched the room, but he found nothing, only a room full of immortal flowers. Willow stared at his white hair for a long moment, then smiled. "Lord Vulcan?" The man whipped his head around, his dark, fierce gaze fixed on Willow. But his expression quickly crumbled, replaced by disbelief. "Linnea passed her immortal power and title to you. She approved of you." Willow found this all very tedious. The man before her had hurt Lynn so deeply, yet now he was putting on such a show. For whom? The dead? Her face grew cold. "Lord Vulcan, there is no need to continue this act. The flower goddess, Linnea, has just faded away, her spirit and body returned to the world. There is no longer a flower goddess. Shouldn't you be with the 9th princess? What are you doing here, looking for her?" Vulcan felt a pain as if his soul were being torn apart. His chest tightened, and he could barely breathe. His handsome face was pale, his body swaying. "Impossible. How could she die? She told you everything. What happened to her? Tell me." Willow's lips curved into a sarcastic smile. She said nothing. Vulcan tried to approach her, but was thrown back by a wave of Lynn's immortal power. The flower goddess's immortal power hated him. The blow was heavy, and since Vulcan did not dodge or retaliate, he coughed up blood, his internal organs crushed. Enduring the excruciating pain, Vulcan lowered his head and begged her, "Please, I'm begging you, tell me." The great lord, guardian of a realm, was now begging a junior immortal to tell him about the deceased flower goddess. "All right then, I will tell you just what you have missed." Willow recounted the story Lynn had told her, her tone cruel and her words precise. The immortal wind blew, the flower branches trembled, filling the room with a light fragrance. She said she would never love you again. She also said she didn't like the name Linnea, that she didn't want her name to be someone else's shadow. Willow held out her hand, and an immortal butterfly landed on her fingertip, nuzzling her affectionately. So I gave her a new name. Lynn, Lord Vulcan, there is no more your Linnea, she is Lynn. Vulcan collapsed to his knees, his eyes filled with a deep, despairing regret. He began to smash everything in the flower goddess's palace, the glazed tiles, the immortal jade lanterns, everything. Linnea, come out if you don't come out, I'll destroy this whole place. Willow retreated to a safe distance and watched him coldly, making no move to stop him. Vulcan had called her Linnea, not a nickname. Linnea, my love, why hadn't he realized it sooner? Realized his own feelings, the little bits of warmth he had inadvertently shown. To come and repent after she was dead was useless. Willow was suddenly reminded of someone. A young general, tall and straight as a pine, his face handsome, his eyes deep. In the dark of night, his eyes had shone, his face flushed as he grabbed her sleeve and declared, "Willow, my wife, I will not fail you." Swiftwing flew from its sheath on its own and nudged Willow's arm with its hilt humming. It seemed to have sensed her thoughts and was comforting her. Willow took hold of Swiftwing, slid it back into its sheath, and patted the hilt. "All right, I'm not sad. I just remembered something I shouldn't have." She left the flower goddess's palace without looking back, indifferent to Vulcan's grief and sorrow. In the scribe's hall, the most difficult mission was thrust into Willow's hands. The scribe star lord smiled. "You are more familiar with the lower realms. Besides, there are no other available immortal lords in the celestial realm at the moment, and the remaining immortals are not powerful enough for this task. Young lady, do well, and when you return, I will personally grant you the title of Sword Goddess." Willow unrolled the scroll and read the description, her lips twitching. She was to go to the demon realm and retrieve the celestial treasure, the formless seal, from the demon emperor. Did the scribe even remember that she was a newly ascended junior immortal? Seeing her shock, the scribe patiently explained. "Don't worry, the formless seal is attuned to immortal spiritual energy. It will follow you. All you need to do is get out in one piece." The formless seal was originally in the southern wastelands, used by the ancient war god to suppress a great demon. A while ago, the demon race had attacked the celestial realm, starting a great war. But the demon emperor had not joined the attack. Instead, he had gone to the southern wastelands and pulled out the formless seal. The great demon was now free, and the formless seal was in the demon emperor's hands. However, the demon emperor had expended a great deal of energy and cultivation to break the seal and was now gravely injured. As soon as he had the seal, he had withdrawn the demon army and retreated to the demon realm to recover. Snatching the treasure from the hands of the injured demon emperor shouldn't be too difficult. Besides, Willow had just inherited the flower goddess's power, was favored by the heavens, and had mastered her sword techniques. The scribe estimated that she could at least fight the demon emperor to a standstill. The ghost clan was causing trouble in the mortal realm, and some demons were wreaking havoc elsewhere. All the powerful immortal lords of the celestial realm had been sent to deal with more serious threats. That left Lord Vulcan, but he was in a state of collapse and couldn't be relied on. So now it really was up to Willow to find the formless seal. Willow carefully put away the scroll. "I understand. I will go." Her light but firm footsteps echoed in the vast, empty scribe's hall. As Willow stepped over the threshold, she suddenly saw something that made her freeze, her other foot as if nailed to the ground. Her heart fluttered, her face darkened, and her aura suddenly turned cold. Willow, the face that had haunted her dreams, the face that had brought her both ecstasy and despair, appeared under a palace wall not far away. Julian was dressed in battle armor, a red cloak over his shoulders. When he saw her, his stern expression softened. Seeing her again, it was as if the blood in his veins had come alive. It burned with a fierce heat, boiling, clamoring to be near her. His heart felt as if a chunk had been ripped out by a wild beast. The long-healed scar tore open again, the pain excruciating, unbearable. Losing her was like dying. His eyes slowly turned red. He wanted to rush to her, to hold her, to kiss her. but something held him back. His fists clenched so tightly, his once proud, unbending posture now seemed to crumble, revealing a hint of vulnerability. "Oh, the war god has returned." The scribe Star-Lord interjected at an inopportune moment, greeting Julian. He squinted, sensing the subtle atmosphere, and quickly stepped in to smooth things over. "Willow, let me introduce you. This is General Julian Thorne, the #1 war god of our celestial realm." So the Julian from the Myriad Illusions abode was not fake. The Myriad Illusions abode opened once every 10 years and could accommodate many people undergoing trials. It was not unheard of to meet someone from the outside world. But in her heart, the young general of the Dayan dynasty and the daughter of the Weatherly family were long dead. Willow's expression was blank as she walked past Julian, brushing his shoulder. Julian lowered his eyes, hiding the hurt in them. The scribe coughed awkwardly and glanced nervously at Julian. That was the newly ascended junior immortal, Willow. She has the celestial sword physique and has also inherited the flower goddess's power and title. Do you have her file?" Julian asked, his voice hoarse and strained. "I want to know her life story." "I do, General, please follow me." As he led the way, the scribe muttered to himself, has he taken a liking to that young woman? Could it be that the cold, ruthless war god has finally had his heart stirred? Willow landed at the crossroads between the lower realm and the demon realm. She didn't rush into the demon realm, but instead took a leisurely stroll through the streets, trying to gather some useful information. She found a noodle shop, ordered a bowl of vegetarian noodles, and sat at a table outside. An old man at the next table was saying, "The demon realm seems to be in some turmoil lately. I hear the demons in the city are rounding people up." Willow pricked up her ears. Another old man continued, "They're taking young women in their teens and 20s. They say they're going to be offered to the demon emperor as cultivation cauldrons for him to absorb their essence. SHH, that's just what I heard. Everyone is saying it." The first old man said angrily, "Outrageous, truly despicable. What can you do? The demon emperor never used to capture people." This sudden demand for beautiful young women was the idea of his subordinate. After all, with the demon emperor sick, tusk, who knows when he'll recover? Of course they'll resort to any means necessary. Willow pondered for a moment. She was filled with righteous, immortal energy. Rushing into the demon realm would likely get her entangled. If she could just find a way to sneak in, she quickly finished her noodles and got up to pay, but a hand stopped her. It was a refined young gentleman, dressed in white and holding a folding fan. The young man said gently, "Miss, this meal is on me." Willow glanced at him. "I don't know you. Why are you paying for my meal?" The young man smiled slightly. "I fell in love with you at first sight. Is that not reason enough?" Willow was dressed plainly, without any makeup. She didn't believe for a second that this was love at first sight. But the young man had no trace of power about him. He was clearly immortal. If he had been a cultivator, she would have sent him flying with her sword. After paying for her meal, the young gentleman brazenly followed Willow. "Miss, I still don't know your name or where you live." "Where are you headed?" Willow ignored him. It wouldn't be right to strike a mortal. She simply said flatly, "My name is Willow. I am a cultivator, and I am currently on my way to raid the demon emperor's lair." She wasn't worried about the young man revealing her plans. He was just a mortal. Even if he went around telling people, no one would believe him. Most people would think she was a fool for saying something like that. But the young man just smiled enigmatically and blinked, looking quite endearing. "My name is Corey, what a coincidence. Miss, I am also on my way to raid the demon emperor's lair." Willow said coolly, "I plan to disguise myself as one of the beauties being offered to the demon emperor to sneak in. Are you coming along?" Corey's face turned various shades of green and white, but when he met Willow's slightly curved eyes, he gritted his teeth. "Yes." Willow glanced at him, hesitating between knocking him out and leaving him with the authorities or just ignoring him. She thought for a moment she would have to rescue the captured women anyway. The young man wouldn't be in any danger if he joined the group. Let him be, she decided. They went to the street where the demons were capturing women. The doors and windows of every house were shut tight, the only sound that of demons breaking in. Willow secretly found a family and explained that she was an immortal who had come to vanquish the demons and could take their daughter's place as a tribute. The family was overjoyed, weeping and kowtowing in thanks. They prepared beautiful clothes for Willow and Corey. Corey frowned as he put on the elaborate dress. "Wait, you don't need to put any of that makeup on me. Use it on her. I'll just wear a veil." He was already handsome. With a white veil over his face, he had an unexpectedly alluring, mysterious beauty. When he was dressed, he saw the fully made-up Willow, and his breath caught in his throat. She was a devastatingly beautiful, bewitching woman. Her skin was like cream, her lips crimson, her teeth like pearls. The look in her eyes was like a mountain mist, a pool of autumn water, captivating and soul-stealing. In that moment, the world seemed to fade, leaving only a room full of spring light. His heart raced, his mind in a turmoil. Willow walked at the very back of the group of young women, her head bowed as she followed along. A heavy black cloth was placed over each of their heads, and they were led by ropes, one after another. This was to prevent the women from seeing the path into the demon realm and escaping. "Willow, Corey is scared," the young man in the dress said, timidly pressing closer. Willow stiffened. "You're choosing now to be scared?" She wasn't used to physical contact with strangers, but the young man was only leaning against her lightly, trembling with fear, and not making any inappropriate advances. She sighed and let him be. After what felt like a long time, the black cloth was removed from her head, and Willow's eyes adjusted to the light. The hall was dim, lit only by a few flickering candles. "Your Majesty, these are the human women we have carefully selected. Your injuries cannot wait. You must use these cultivation cauldrons to recover your strength as soon as possible," a man in black said, kneeling respectfully on one knee. A handsome but somewhat wicked-looking man lay lazily on the main throne, toying with a jade seal in his hand. Willow squinted, her eyes slowly adjusting to the dim light. When she saw the demon emperor on the throne, she was stunned, her face a mask of disbelief. The legendary demon emperor twirled the jade seal in his hand and then said nonchalantly, "Chu Feng, I've already told you, I don't need cultivation cauldrons. Send them back." "Your Majesty," Chu Feng said through gritted teeth, clearly unwilling. The captured young women who had been crying softly were now filled with hope, their eyes fixed on the demon emperor. A few of them, upon seeing the demon emperor's face, blushed and looked down shyly. Chu Feng knew he couldn't persuade his master. He had no choice but to order his men to untie the young women and take them back. Willow held out her wrist. The moment the rope fell away, she drew swift-wing and rushed up the steps of the grand hall. "Your Majesty, be careful," Chu Feng was horrified and drew his own blade, lunging at Willow. "Sheathe your blade, Chu Feng. It's all right." Just as Swiftwing was about to reach the demon emperor's neck, he leisurely extended 2 fingers and lightly caught the blade. He waved his hand to dismiss Chu Feng, then looked up at Willow, his expression one of surprised delight. "Cousin Willow, what are you doing here?" Willow nodded and smiled slightly, sheathing Swiftwing. "Cousin, it's been a while. How did you end up as the demon emperor?" Chu Feng? Huh. The young man was also dumbfounded. She had recognized the demon emperor on the throne at once. It was her cousin, Caspian Sterling. Willow had only used 1/10 of her spiritual power just now, and Caspian had blocked it with ease. It seemed that her little cousin, even though he was seriously injured, was still incredibly powerful. Caspian had Chu Feng bring over a soft chair and place it next to his throne. Then he said excitedly, "Of course. Aren't I amazing?" He puffed out his chest. Willow clapped her hands. "Amazing, amazing. My cousin is the most amazing. Willow, I wanted to come find you, but the fight for the demon emperor's throne was fierce, and I was busy dealing with that. Plus, I had to go to the southern wastelands to free my mother, so," Caspian sighed. Caspian's original name was actually Wen Liuxi. He was Willow's cousin. His mother was a demon, a great demon of ancient bloodline, Chu He, the daughter of the previous demon emperor. After Chu He was captured and used as a seal, his father had disappeared. From a young age, Caspian had been bullied for his demon bloodline. A half-human, half-demon monster, no one wanted anything to do with him. Only Willow had played with him, often secretly bringing him delicious food and fun toys and singing to him. He was often locked in the woodshed without food, not taught to read, write, or cultivate, and constantly humiliated and bullied. One day, the 7 or 8-year-old Willow, a tiny little thing, had come to him and said in a sweet, childish voice, "Cousin Caspian, I'll teach you to write. I'll share my sword manuals with you, too." Caspian's swordsmanship and knowledge were all taught to him by Willow, hand in hand. In a way, Willow was the only light in Caspian's unfortunate childhood. Later, Caspian's demon bloodline had awakened. He had lost control and nearly killed an innocent junior disciple. It was Willow who had shielded the disciple with her own body, preventing Caspian from making a terrible mistake. Although Willow had said she didn't blame him, that it wasn't his fault, Caspian was filled with guilt and remorse. He had packed his things that night and left the Wen family. He had taken the surname Chu, fully awakened his demon powers, and worked tirelessly day and night to become stronger. At first, Willow had occasionally received letters from him, but then they had stopped. She had never expected him to become the current demon emperor. "You've suffered so much all these years," Willow said, her heart aching for him. A warmth spread through Caspian's chest, and his lips curved into a wide smile. "It was nothing but Willow. I heard you ascended?" Willow nodded. "The reason I came here was on a mission from the Celestial realm. They sent me to retrieve the formless seal. So I disguised myself as one of the young women being offered to you. But when I saw it was you, Cousin Caspian, I didn't attack." That sword strike had just been for show. Caspian suddenly remembered something, and his handsome face turned beet red. "Ah, Willow, I'm very virtuous. Really, you have to believe me, my subordinates forced those beauties on me. I've always remembered what you told me." "I haven't harmed anyone, I know," Willow said, patting his head trustingly. They chatted for a bit longer, and then Caspian handed her the jade seal he had been toying with. "Here, this is the formless seal. Take it back, Willow." Willow accepted it without hesitation and then asked, "Were you injured when you pulled out the seal?" "Let me see, I'll heal you before I go. I'm a demon, you're an immortal, your healing arts won't work on me." Though he said this dejectedly, Caspian still turned around, offering his back to Willow. Willow said nothing. She channeled the power of the heavens, a gentle, warm energy, into Caspian's body. Feeling the deep-seated injuries within him gradually healing, Caspian's jaw nearly dropped. "I have the celestial sword physique. Since the heavens favor me, I'll just borrow some of their power," Willow said with a smile, though her lips were slowly turning pale. She continued until Caspian's old wounds were completely healed. He felt his body brimming with energy, his spirits high, and he was overjoyed. Willow withdrew her hand, and, overcome with exhaustion, her eyes closed and she fainted. She had transferred too much of the heavenly power, and now her own life force was depleted. It would take some time for her to recover. Caspian's pupils contracted, and he instinctively reached out to catch Willow as she fell. But someone else was faster, catching her in his arms. Caspian looked up, and his face changed drastically. Corbin Quinn. The young man, Corey, had shed his dress and was now wearing a maple-red robe. He grinned, his lips as red as blood, revealing 2 beautiful canine teeth. "Caspian Sterling, you're a useless waste yourself, and you drag Willow down with you." Useless, Corbin Quinn. There was only one person in the world with that name, the demon lord of the demon realm. As for why there was only one, it was because everyone else with the same name had been killed. Caspian was furious and wanted to punch him, but he held back for the sake of the sleeping Willow in his arms. "What are you doing here? I'm warning you, don't even think about getting any ideas about her a toad wanting to eat a swan." In your dreams, Corbin's face instantly turned as black as the bottom of a pot. He smiled coldly, his smoky gray eyes filled with a chilling light. "Say that again, and I'll tear down your demon emperor's palace." Caspian gritted his teeth in hatred. You secretly collect things she has used. You've made 300 puppets in her likeness that you play with day and night in your room. You stalk her, you're a pervert, no, a beast. But at these words, Corbin didn't get angry. He chuckled. He said leisurely, "You're right, I am a beast. I covet her. What of it?" Caspian threw a punch, but Corbin easily caught it. Corbin held the sleeping Willow tightly with one arm and grabbed Caspian's fist with the other. "Caspian Sterling," he said flatly, "I'm not that little slave from back then anymore. I have the power to protect her." Years ago, Willow had been traveling down a mountain when she had come across a little slave. The slave was an orphan, starving and cold, beaten and cursed at every day. He looked so pitiful. Willow had bought his freedom, brought him back to the Jade Emanation sect, and raised him like a little brother, treating him with kindness and care. And then, after Caspian left, he too had suddenly fallen to the demonic path and been chased into the demon realm. Willow had cried for a long time back then. A vein throbbed on Caspian's forehead. "You don't even dare to reveal your dark feelings for her. Now she's an immortal. Does she need your protection? Don't think you can make me let go, not unless I'm dead." When Willow opened her eyes, she found herself in an inn in a town. The formless seal was with her, as were her personal and spiritual artifacts. But why did her mouth feel a little sore? She looked in a bronze mirror and saw that the corner of her lip was slightly broken, as red as blood. "Ah, am I getting a cold sore?" she wondered. There was something new around her neck, a black necklace, a black cord holding a small, transparent vial containing a red and black liquid. Is this a keepsake from Caspian? She looked away and saw a golden marking on her right arm, a demon marking. To be marked by a demon meant that the demon race recognized you and had placed a traceable mark on you. With this mark, you could freely enter and leave the demon realm. Also, if Willow were attacked, the mark would transfer half of the damage to the demon who had placed it. Usually, a demon would only willingly leave their mark on someone they trusted completely. This golden marking must have been from Caspian. So where did this vile necklace come from? Willow looked at it for a long time but couldn't figure it out. She decided it must have been a gift from Caspian as well. Now that she had recovered, she had to return to the celestial realm and report to the scribe. Willow packed her things and left the room. A moment later, the air in a corner of the room shimmered and a figure slowly materialized. Corbin touched his own lips, his gaze fixed on the direction Willow had gone, his expression dark and unreadable. Willow returned to the celestial realm as quickly as she could. As she walked, she noticed the other immortals looking at her strangely. They gathered in small groups, whispering and pointing at her. When they saw her looking, they would quickly disperse. Willow was a little confused. She found the scribe's hall and returned the formless seal. The scribe Star-Lord accepted it with a smile and added a new title to her official record. A white light flashed, and Willow felt her immortal power grow stronger. "Well done. From now on, you are the new sword goddess. For every mission you complete, you will be rewarded with immortal power." The scribe Star-Lord said, "You should go to the 9 Heavens Star River for a bath. You have too much demonic energy on you, and it's not good for your immortal body." Willow nodded. As soon as she left the hall, a small figure leaped into her arms. Willow lifted the small figure up. It was still struggling, its small arms and legs flailing cutely. Seraphina, the little phoenix princess she hadn't seen in a while, laughed. "Little Willow put me down." Seraphina hugged Willow's arm affectionately and whispered mysteriously in her ear, "Little Willow, did you just get back from a mission? Did you hear about what happened with the war god and the 9th princess a few days ago?" "No. The war god is Julian, and the 9th princess, isn't that the princess Lynn mentioned, the one who was intimate with Lord Vulcan?" "Oh, I heard that the war god and the 9th princess were engaged, but a few days ago, the war god suddenly broke off the engagement. The 9th princess and the celestial emperor were furious, and they sentenced the war god to suffer the heavenly thunder punishment." Willow raised her eyebrows in surprise. Julian broke off the engagement? Why? For Sylvia. It was rare for someone to just be undergoing a trial in the myriad illusions abode like her. Sylvia was probably just an illusion. Or perhaps her appearance had made him realize that Sylvia might also be an immortal undergoing a trial. If so, it wasn't surprising that he wanted to break off the engagement. He really would go to any lengths for Sylvia. Serafina continued, "I heard the heavenly thunder punishment is very painful. You're locked up and struck by lightning for a whole month, and you lose 3,000 years of immortal power, but what can you do? The Celestial Emperor dotes on the 9th princess, his youngest daughter." Willow asked, confused, if he didn't want to marry her, why did he agree to the engagement in the first place? And isn't the 9th princess in love with Lord Vulcan? Before she could finish, a sharp whip cracked through the air, heading straight for her face. Just as the whip was about to strike, Willow's eyes narrowed. Swiftwing flew from its sheath and blocked the blow. With a sharp sound, the whip was sliced in two and fell to the ground. Serafina was so shocked she was speechless, frozen in place. The wielder of the whip was a young woman in a pink dress, her hair in two buns, a peach blossom painted on her forehead. She held her head high and shouted at Willow, "What were you saying? Were you talking bad about me behind my back?" Serafina snapped out of her daze and tugged on Willow's sleeve, whispering, "Little Willow, that's the 9th princess, Lunaria. She's very arrogant. Don't provoke her. When she gets angry, she doesn't care who she's attacking, not even her own brother." Willow looked at the 9th princess calmly. "Your Highness, I was not speaking ill of you. You were just saying something about me and Brother Vulcan," Lunaria said, her hands on her hips. "Brother Vulcan and I are just good friends. Brother Julian is my real fiancé." She rolled her eyes at Willow. "It was you vixen, who seduced Brother Julian into breaking off the engagement, wasn't it?" Willow was stunned. Julian had broken off the engagement for her. How could that be? But a small part of her felt that it might be true. Otherwise, why were all the immortals in the celestial realm looking at her like that? But didn't Julian love Sylvia? Was he afraid the 9th princess would cause trouble for Sylvia and was using her as a shield? He was truly a persistent nuisance. Willow frowned. Before she could speak, Serafina couldn't hold back any longer. "Your Highness, you are being unreasonable. How can you say that about little Willow? The war god broke off the engagement of his own accord. How can you blame an innocent person? Could little Willow have held a sword to the war god's throat and forced him to break off the engagement? Serafina was, after all, a phoenix princess. Even the Celestial Emperor had to show her some respect. Well, she cut my beloved 9-dragon whip with her sword. Do you know how precious my 9-dragon whip is? She couldn't afford to replace it even if she sold herself. Serafina, why are you protecting her?" Perhaps because she didn't want to provoke Serafina, Lunaria's face grew even darker. She stamped her foot and pointed at Willow, her voice shrill. "A woman like you who uses a sword is nothing but a wooden stake, with no femininity at all. What kind of female immortal uses a sword like you? How could Brother Julian possibly fall for a woman like you?" "You're right," Willow thought silently. "Julian really wouldn't fall for a woman like me." "Your Highness, you can't say that. Little Willow is now the sword goddess. When she ascended to her divine position, a brilliant light filled the sky, and the entire celestial realm could feel it. Disrespecting a divine master is a grave offense in the celestial realm," Serafina said, like a cat with its fur on end. "How can you define women so narrowly? Does being powerful mean you're not a woman?" The surrounding immortals began to whisper among themselves. Indeed, Princess Serafina is right. General Thorn himself said he would take full responsibility for breaking off the engagement." Lunaria's face turned red. She was speechless, her mouth opening and closing. Then she burst into tears right there in public. Willow sighed helplessly and stepped in front of Serafina. "All right, both of you stop fighting. Let's just drop it." The 9th princess was just a spoiled little girl. There was no need to argue with her. Since Willow, the person involved, had said to let it go, Serafina, though she looked like she could go on for another 300 rounds, had no choice but to back down. An attendant came forward to comfort Lunaria, trying to lead her away. Lunaria suddenly stopped crying, her eyes lighting up with surprise and joy. "Brother Julian," the surrounding immortals parted, creating a path. Not far away, Julian was walking towards them, his handsome face grim. General Julian Thorn, the war god of the celestial realm. Lunaria ran over and threw herself at Julian, crying, "Brother Julian, they were bullying me." The other immortals gasped. Seraphina glanced at the two of them, then at Willow, looking as if she wanted to say something but couldn't. Willow's expression was neutral as she looked at Julian. Julian looked at his Willow, and seeing her cold indifference, his heart ached with a deep, piercing sorrow. He looked down at Lunaria clinging to him, and his expression changed, his aura turning icy. "Your Highness, please conduct yourself with dignity. Our engagement has been terminated. We have no further connection." Julian took a step back, letting Lunaria stumble, nearly falling. Lunaria's eyes turned red again. "What did I do wrong?" she sobbed. "Tell me if you change your mind now, I can ask my father to cancel your punishment. Your Highness, I apologize. Matters of the heart cannot be controlled. My not liking you does not mean there is anything wrong with you." The ninth princess had been adored her whole life, getting whatever she wanted. Everyone treated her with respect. She couldn't bear being rejected so publicly by the man she loved. She covered her face and ran away, wailing. "Hey," Seraphina said, and chased after her, calling back, "Little Willow, I'll go check on her, I'll stop her from tattling." It seemed the ninth princess was very good at tattling. Now it was just Willow and Julian, staring at each other. The other immortals exchanged glances and retreated a little further, hiding to eavesdrop, their eyes wide with anticipation, as if they were about to witness some earth-shattering gossip. "If the war god has no further business, I will take my leave." Seeing that Julian was not speaking, Willow spoke first, intending to go around him to the 9 Heavens Star River. Julian grabbed her arm, his voice hoarse. "Willow, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I know I was wrong." Willow smiled faintly and firmly pulled her arm from his grasp. "You don't need to apologize. The past is the past. Everything that happened in the myriad illusions abode was a necessary trial. Since we both successfully passed it, we should both be happy." The eavesdropping immortals looked enlightened. So the two had met during a love trial. It wasn't uncommon for immortals to become enemies or lovers through a love trial. But it seemed the man was in love, but the woman was not. Julian blocked her path frantically. "I love you. I was just under the influence of Sylvia's goo worm, which altered my mind and made me despise you. That's why I treated you that way. Later, I avenged you. The people who hurt you all paid the price. I even found the last surviving member of the Weatherly family." Willow's eyelashes fluttered. A thought crossed her mind. So that was what had really happened. She fell silent, her feelings a little complicated. After a moment, a small laugh escaped her. She asked him what had happened to Sylvia in the end. Julian watched her face carefully as he told her how he had dealt with Sylvia. "I see," she said flatly. "I understand. It was just a cruel twist of fate, the unpredictability of life." "Don't hate me, please. I'm begging you," Julian said in a low voice. The tall, powerful general, his unbending spine, now bowed deeply. "Can you just forgive me a little? Look at me again, just one more time." "Willow, I couldn't move on. I can't let go. The memories torment me day and night." His eyes were red as he knelt before her, in front of everyone, and humbly clutched the hem of her robe. "My life is yours. You can kill me, beat me, curse me, anything. Just don't go, please." The emotional ties that had been severed in Willow's heart suddenly burned, throwing her into confusion. "You had your reasons, but my heart is already dead ashes. How can it be rekindled?" With that, she closed her eyes and turned to leave. Julian's hand was still gripping the hem of her robe, as if he would never let go. She tilted her head, her eyes bright and clear like a mountain spring. A glimmer of hope appeared in Julian's sorrowful eyes. Then, Willow lifted her foot and slowly, deliberately, stepped on his hand. With a sickening crunch, the bones in his hand were crushed. Julian's face went white with pain, and a cold sweat broke out on his brow, but he gritted his teeth and didn't make a sound. With his hand no longer in the way, Willow walked away. From now on, even if his soul were to be shattered, she would not look at him again. The story of how the war god, Julian Thorne, had rejected the ninth princess, knelt before Willow in front of all the immortals, and had his hand crushed for his troubles, quickly spread throughout the celestial realm in secret. The celestial emperor was furious, and the ninth princess was so angry she locked herself in her palace and refused to come out, smashing things and screaming at her attendants. Soon, Willow was summoned before the celestial emperor. The emperor was angry mainly because Julian had first publicly humiliated his daughter, and then had humbled himself to the dust for another woman. What was that if not a deliberate insult to his daughter? His anger extended to Willow. As soon as she arrived, he belittled her and was about to hand down a punishment. Willow remained calm on the surface, but inwardly she was cursing the celestial emperor, thinking how someone so willing to abuse his power could be the ruler of the heavens. Before the emperor could issue his decree, Seraphina burst in with the patriarch of the Phoenix clan. Willow had saved the life of the Phoenix clan's treasured princess, their only direct heir. The Phoenix clan could not stand by and do nothing. They begged the emperor for mercy, insisting that Willow was innocent and doing their best to protect her. Before the patriarch could finish his eloquent speech, another person rushed into the hall. It was the white-haired Lord Vulcan. His eyes were dark and hollow, his face haggard, and his hair looked as if it hadn't been combed in a month. He was holding a pot of host of flowers and didn't even put it down to greet the emperor. Lord Vulcan also spoke in Willow's defense, saying that Willow's attitude towards the war god was clear for all to see. It was obviously the war god who was pursuing her. The full responsibility lay with him. It was Julian who had publicly humiliated the ninth princess. Willow had been polite and respectful from beginning to end. The celestial emperor's face was very ugly, but he was helpless. These people were eloquent speakers who could argue that black was white, and in this case, they were right. Moreover, they were all high-ranking immortals and a lord. The emperor had to give them face, so he had no choice but to drop the matter. Afterward, Willow solemnly thanked Seraphina and Lord Vulcan. Lord Vulcan waved his hand and left without a word, still holding the flower pot. Seraphina giggled and clung to Willow, wanting to take her to the Phoenix clan's territory to play. "Hey, what's with that Lord Vulcan? He's been carrying that flower pot around lately, and he's always lost in thought. You call his name and he doesn't answer, just stares into space." Willow was not surprised. "He," she said quietly, "has lost someone very important to him." Seraphina nodded, as if she understood. "Well, the war god has been looking like that lately, too, all listless and lifeless. Little Willow must be very important to him, right?" "Who knows?" Willow said noncommittally. As they were walking, a familiar small figure suddenly appeared around a corner, blocking their path. Seraphina immediately went on alert. "Your Highness!" Lunaria was not wearing the pink dress from before, but a camellia red and white silk dress. She looked very delicate and lovely. Unfortunately, the moment she opened her mouth, no one thought she was delicate anymore. "I heard my father was going to punish you, so you brought reinforcements." HMPH, Willow was shocked to see what she took out of her brocade pouch. How did the ninth princess have the formless seal she had retrieved from her cousin, the demon emperor? The jade seal in Lunaria's hand was indeed the formless seal. Lunaria held the formless seal high, immortal power gathering in her hand. A soft white light began to glow, growing brighter and brighter until it was as dazzling as daylight. She roared at Willow, her teeth bared. "Brother Julian is so devoted to you, yet you cast him aside like a worn-out shoe. Hurting him and humiliating him, how can there be such a wicked person in the world? Today I will seal you away and make you immortal again." Seraphina was horrified. She unleashed her own immortal power, trying to force Lunaria to drop the formless seal. But her power had no effect on the ninth princess. She was protected by many treasures and did not move an inch. Seraphina turned to Willow and shouted, "She's sacrificing 8,000 years of her own cultivation to seal you with the formless seal, little Willow. Run!" The formless seal could suppress demons below and seal immortals above. However, it was generally used against demons and evil beings. and only rarely to seal an immortal who had committed a great crime. The ninth princess had stolen the formless seal from somewhere and was willing to sacrifice 8,000 years of her own cultivation just to cause trouble for Willow. Willow did not move. She stared at the formless seal, and Swiftwing flew from its sheath with a hum, facing the seal's power head-on. She could feel the formless seal locking onto her soul. Even if she ran, she could not outrun a celestial artifact. If she could not escape, then she would fight. The formless seal and Swiftwing clashed, a blur of motion, back and forth. Seeing Willow sweating and gritting her teeth, Seraphina joined the fray, placing her hands on Willow's back and transferring her own immortal power to her. Lunaria sneered. She formed a hand seal, and the formless seal easily knocked Swiftwing aside and shot straight for Willow's head. No one noticed that the golden demon marking on Willow's right arm and the small vial necklace around her neck both began to glow faintly. They were about to take the brunt of the damage for Willow, but because they contained demonic energy, they triggered the formless seal's suppressive power, negating their protective effect. Willow took the full force of the seal. Swiftwing spun through the air and landed in the ground, its white blade still trembling. Willow was thrown back 10 miles, coughing up blood, and fainted. Seraphina was also caught in the blast. Her face was pale and her insides churned. She rushed over and, choking back sobs, lifted Willow, trying to feed her immortal pills, but Willow couldn't swallow. Little Willow, wake up." Not far away, Lunaria spat out a mouthful of blood and laughed. "Ha ha ha ha, I've sealed her spiritual roots and most of her cultivation. This is your punishment, it's what you deserve." Seraphina's anger burned. She forced the words out through gritted teeth. "Lunaria, you've gone too far." The commotion had not gone unnoticed. The celestial officials, hearing the noise, rushed over to see what was happening. The scribe star lord gasped and held his head in his hands. "My dear princess, my ninth highness, what have you done? You've stolen a divine artifact, injured a celestial immortal, and harmed an innocent person. You'll have to be confined for at least 1,000 years to answer for this." Lunaria pouted and crossed her arms, clearly not listening. Seraphina held Willow's body and looked up. "Help me take little Willow to the Phoenix clan's Nirvana pool. I will personally watch over her and help her heal." The scribe quickly agreed. He took charge of the scene, sending some immortals to escort them back to the Phoenix clan, sending someone to inform the Celestial Emperor, and then looking at Lunaria awkwardly. "Your Highness, I will escort you to the confinement grotto for now, until the Emperor makes his decision." But before he could move, a gust of wind shot past him and his vision went black. When the scribe Star Lord could see again, he was so terrified he nearly fainted along with Willow. A tall man, covered in blood, his face dark and terrifying, held a long sword and had just run the ninth princess through. This man was none other than the war god, Julian Thorn. He had been in the confinement grotto, suffering the thunder punishment, when he suddenly felt the small spell he had placed on Willow activate, informing him that her immortal power had been sealed and she was gravely injured. He had lost all reason, like a cornered beast. Without a second thought, he had broken out, injuring many of the guards in the process. He had fought like a man possessed, his body covered in wounds, blood flowing freely. He held his sword, his fierce, dark expression like that of a god of death. No one who saw him dared to stand in his way. Julian had stabbed Lunaria, then pulled the sword out, red blood dripping from the blade. Lunaria's fingers dug into his back as she cried and screamed, her wails echoing through the air, her nails tearing his back to shreds. Julian didn't even blink. He then struck again, severing Lunaria's immortal bone, and then again and again. "Anyone who hurts Willow must die." His eyes were scarlet, his expression crazed. He was on the verge of being consumed by his inner demons. The scribe Star Lord finally reacted, leading his men to restrain Julian, pinning him to the ground. Lunaria had been stabbed so many times she was a bloody mess, her immortal bones shattered. She would never be able to cultivate again. She lay on the ground, barely breathing, her camellia red dress torn and tattered. It was unclear if she would even survive. The celestial realm had been thrown into chaos. The events of that day spread like wildfire. The Celestial Emperor was furious and ordered Julian to be exiled to the harsh, cold southern wastelands for 1,000 years. But he also knew that the ninth princess was not without blame. He issued another decree, confining Lunaria to her palace for 1,000 years, forbidding her from stepping outside. This was a blatant show of favoritism. The other immortals were displeased but could do nothing. In any case, Lunaria was now a cripple. Even after 1,000 years, she would not be able to cause any more trouble. Julian was being escorted by a group of celestial officials, about to be taken to the southern wastelands, when they suddenly received news that the gates of the celestial realm were under attack by a demon army. The situation was urgent. The celestial officials had no time for Julian and rushed to the southern heavenly gate. The demon army was a combined force of the demon clan and the demon race. Leading them were the demon emperor, Caspian Sterling, and the demon lord, Corbin Quinn. The vast demon army stretched as far as the eye could see, a black mass that had ascended to the celestial realm and was now attacking the heavenly gate. Even the celestial emperor was alerted and had to summon the celestial soldiers to meet the enemy. It was no wonder the celestial realm was on high alert. It had been tens of thousands of years since the demon race had last attacked the celestial realm. The demon, and ghost realms had always maintained a strange balance with the celestial realm. Even when they caused trouble, it was usually small-scale skirmishes in the mortal realm, killing a few humans, never a full-scale assault on the celestial realm. Moreover, 10,000 years ago, the demon race had not allied with the demon clan. The three evil races had always looked down on each other and would even fight among themselves. An alliance to attack the heavenly gate was unheard of. But now, the demon alliance is estimated to be around 800,000 strong, with many high-level demons among them. A celestial official stammered. The demon emperor and the demon lord are both here in person. The faces of all the immortals fell. If a war broke out, they would surely suffer heavy casualties. The demons' regenerative abilities were astounding. They could wear them down with a war of attrition. "Your Majesty, what should we do?" The Celestial Emperor's expression was grave as he looked at the two leaders of the opposing army. One was a handsome, wicked-looking young man with a nonchalant air, Caspian Sterling. The other was a handsome youth with a sinister smile, Corbin Quinn. Though the two of them fought like cats and dogs whenever they met, they shared a common goal: to protect Willow. So the two of them had temporarily joined forces and rushed to the celestial realm to stand up for their beloved. But before the Celestial Emperor could speak, Caspian spoke first. "Your Majesty, we have come today to ask for a few people. If you agree, we will withdraw our troops. Otherwise, we will have no choice but to go to war." Corbin snorted coldly. "We brought so many people. Why are we wasting time talking to this old dog? Let's just charge in, kill everyone, and take who we want. Who's here to visit? We're here to rob them blind." Caspian took a deep breath, fighting the urge to hit him. The Celestial Emperor's face shifted through various shades of green and white. The other celestial officials also looked grim, their eyes fixed on Corbin, wishing they could tear his mouth off. The Celestial Emperor, however, managed to keep his composure. He saw that Caspian was more reasonable and addressed him. "Who do you want? Tell me." "Willow, the ninth princess," Caspian said, glancing at the Emperor's slightly darkened expression and smiling. "And your General Julian Thorn, have him come out and fight us." The Celestial Emperor was suspicious. "What do you want with my daughter?" Could it be because of what had happened between Lunaria and Willow? Caspian said slowly, "Willow is an honored guest of both the demon clan and the demon race. She bears my demon emperor's mark. I felt her get injured, so I questioned one of your junior immortals and learned what happened. Don't worry, we are not like you. We will not harm the innocent. The ninth princess, the one who hurt her, must be handed over to us for us to deal with. As for Julian, he wasn't an accomplice, but I just don't like him, so I want to fight him," Corbin said with a bright smile, revealing two small canine teeth, his smoky gray eyes shining with a cold light. Caspian nodded. The matter did, in a way, start because of Julian. The Celestial Emperor stood frozen, his hands and feet cold. He knew he couldn't protect the ninth princess. If he tried to protect his daughter today, he had no doubt that these two madmen would massacre everyone at the southern heavenly gate. Besides, Lunaria was now a cripple. Handing her over was no great loss. In a flash, the Celestial Emperor weighed the pros and cons and nodded in agreement. I will have Lunaria and Julian brought here. As for Willow, she was taken to the Phoenix clan by their princess for treatment. If you two cannot wait, you may go to the Phoenix clan to visit. Just get out of here and don't visit the Celestial realm again, but before the Celestial officials could bring them, Julian walked onto the field of confrontation himself. His lips were pale, his face was pale, and he was still bound by immortal binding chains. His clothes were tattered, and he looked very pathetic. Corbin looked him up and down and sneered, "So you're the waste who went through a love trial with Willow? You're not even worthy. You made her sad, and then you came crawling back like a dog, begging for forgiveness." Julian looked down, silent, but his fists clenched, his nails digging into his palms. Corbin moved in a flash. Before anyone could see what he had done, Julian, who was a head taller than him, was sent flying. He nonchalantly twisted his wrist. He hadn't even used any demonic energy. Cough, cough. Julian struggled to his feet, his chest heaving. He whispered, "I accept it. You can hit me, curse me, it's all on Willow's behalf. I accept it all, it's what I deserve." Corbin's brow furrowed. The flames of jealousy and anger licked at his heart, driving him mad. He walked over to Julian, kicked him over again, and then stomped on his back, grinding his heel into his bones and flesh. "Are you worthy to say her name? If you dare to say it again, I'll rip your tongue out." A fire burned in Julian's eyes. "Why can't I say it?" he said firmly. "In the Myriad Illusions abode, she called me Julian, we were intimate, she begged to marry me." With a loud thud, Caspian joined in. He spat on the ground and slapped Julian, sending him flying. "What kind of trash bullies my cousin and then has the gall to covet her?" he shouted. Julian seemed to have finally reached his limit. He stopped suppressing his power and, with a great effort, broke the immortal binding chains. He reached out, and a general's long spear appeared in his hand. He fought the two of them, 1 against 2. All three fought with deadly intent, each blow aimed to kill. Julian had been injured by the thunder punishment in the confinement grotto, yet he was able to fight the demon emperor and the demon lord for several hours. But in the end, his strength failed him and he collapsed. Corbin kicked him a few more times and was about to draw his sword and finish him off when he heard a clear female voice that made him stop. "Cousin Caspian, Corey, what are you doing?" "Stop it." Willow stood in front of Julian, her face disapproving. "I was recovering nicely in the Phoenix clan when I heard from Seraphina that you two had ganged up and attacked the southern heavenly gate. I rushed over here, even though I'm still injured." Corbin threw down his sword and rushed over to Willow, looking her over from head to toe. "Willow, come with us, we'll help you heal." Caspian pouted. Willow still has a soft spot for her old flame. She doesn't see how heartbroken we are. Seeing Corbin's face darken again, Willow quickly placated them. "No, I just don't want you to commit any killings and make things worse with the celestial realm. No matter what, Julian is still the war god. Please, give the celestial realm some face for my sake, all right?" She had learned on the way here that the young man, Corey, was actually Corbin Quinn. They were both acquaintances, so they should be easy to talk to. Corbin nodded frantically, his face a picture of obedience and adoration, a far cry from the fierce youth he had been moments before. "We'll do whatever Willow says." Willow sighed in exasperation. "Have your demons withdraw. Let's have peace. Don't cause any more trouble." Caspian immediately turned and gave the order. "Everyone, withdraw." His obedience was absolute. "I'll come visit you when I'm better." "Don't worry, I'm fine," Willow said, waving her hand. "I have the celestial sword physique. I can wield a sword and cultivate without spiritual roots. I can interact with all things and use spells without immortal power. Although I was sealed by the formless seal, the situation is not critical." Julian opened his eyes and stared blankly for a moment. He was lying in a clear pool of water. The pool was 2 meters deep, but he, a grown man, was floating on the surface, unable to sink. "You're awake," the voice, etched into his very bones, made Julian's eyes widen. Willow was wearing a light blue gauze robe, tied loosely at her waist. She was leaning lazily against a stone bed in a cave, wiping Swiftwing with a handkerchief. "If you're awake, you should go. This is a sacred place of the Phoenix clan. Even the war god is not allowed to stay for long." Julian climbed out of the pool and onto the bank, his lips pressed together. "Willow, you brought me to the Phoenix clan, to their Nirvana pool to heal. Does that mean you've forgiven me?" Willow didn't even glance at him. "I just saw that you were seriously injured. If something had happened to you, it would have been difficult to explain to the celestial realm. But in the mortal realm, you said you would always love me and stay by my side." Julian pressed on, unwilling to give up. "Do you still remember those words? I heard them. Don't take them seriously." Another sharp blade plunged into Julian's heart, twisting and tearing, the pain unbearable. "You should know what the celestial sword physique is. Those with this physique are destined to bear the heavy responsibility of saving the world. You all retained your emotional ties after your love trials, but my love trial was meant to sever mine." Willow's voice was light, as if she were talking about the weather. "The heavens have given me their utmost favor, but in return, I am not allowed to have the 7 emotions and 6 desires. Besides, I could die any day fighting to quell some unrest. For now, with the Demon Emperor and the Demon Lord as my friends, there doesn't seem to be any major unrest in the world, but who knows what the future holds." Julian's heart tightened. "I will protect you. Anyone who wants to harm you will have to step over my dead body first." He raised his right hand. "I swear on my soul, Willow, I will love and protect you for all eternity. If there is any falsehood in this oath, may I be struck by lightning and never be reborn." Willow finally looked at him properly. As she watched him, she suddenly chuckled. She rested her chin on her hand, her index finger tapping her brow. "In the Nirvana pool, I saw the rest of the young general's life from the myriad illusions abode." The Phoenix clan's Nirvana pool. As the name suggested, it was a place of ascension, of rebirth. As she had healed there, her body and bones had been reforged, and in her dreams, she had relived the first half of her life. She had seen Julian's collapse, his despair, his heart of dead ashes after her death. She had seen his revenge, his efforts, his solitude. The emotional ties that had been broken burned with an unprecedented heat. She had originally planned to ignore Julian, but in the end, she had brought him back to the Nirvana pool and healed him. Julian was stunned for a moment before he realized who the young general was. "I was indeed heartbroken. My feelings for Willow were never false," he said bitterly. He looked like a large, wet dog wagging its tail at its master, only to be abandoned. "Although I'm supposed to sever all emotional ties, but—" Willow's tone changed. "If you can make me fall for you again, that will be your own merit. It's not impossible." Julian's head shot up, his eyes instantly burning with a bright, fiery light. He was so excited he stammered, "W. Willow, does that mean you're willing to forgive me? It was a trial, there's no need to dwell on it. To hold a grudge would make me seem petty. Let the past be the past. As for the future, we'll see how things go."